All right, we got a caller. Thanks for calling in. What do you got?
I heard this recently from like this AI safety researcher, and it was like, what if you found out that all of your morals are obviously fake? I don't understand why you would stay so attached to them.
And that's what religion, when I was in college, right, the fundamentalist Christians that I went to college with would always be like, you're an atheist? If I were an atheist, I'd go around stabbing people. I don't understand what, I'm only good because I listen to God.
I don't think serious Christian philosophers think this anymore.
It feels intuitive to you that because we created the AI knows that it owes us letting us debug it, right? But like, in fact, if we give it certain preferences, by default, it's just going to go with the original preferences.
But it doesn't seem that extreme to me of a belief where it's like, try not to kill people, try not to do this, try not to do that. It feels like one in a million, like YOLO, these preferences.
I mean, yeah, look, it's like maybe... Friday, April 24th. Welcome to Doom Debates Live. Hi, everybody. All right, so your questions are coming in from the chat, and you guys have these crowns in YouTube. I'm seeing Michael Cheers 8803. For some reason, he's got the #1 crown. I guess he's been hyping up the show, so thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. So Michael's saying, I want to call in. Right, okay, let me get you guys the call-in link. This link right here that I just pasted in YouTube, this is the live call-in link. And anybody's welcome. We're an equal opportunity debate host here. All right, so somebody's saying, what do you think of open source models like Kimi starting to out-benchmark OpenAI and Anthropic? That's interesting. When you say out-benchmark, I think you mean like out-benchmark their open source models, or are you specifically thinking about, the cutting-edge GPT 5.5 getting out-benchmark? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by out-benchmark, so maybe clarify that. Hey, Punmaster, crown number 3. Yeah, definitely an active commenter. I'm seeing a lot of Punmaster comments on the videos. Thanks for your engagement. All right, we got producer Ori in the chat. Everybody say hi to producer Ori. Let's give him a like reaction. All right, so yeah, I mean, in terms of out-benchmarking, I do think it's correct. I think I did hear that in terms of their open source, like OpenAI's official open source model is getting out-benchmarked by some of these other open source models. And like, I mean, I think the consensus is just that like, yeah, open source tends to lag 6 months behind, right? And the only question is it going to lag 3 months behind, 6 months behind, 12 months behind? Probably always going to be in that range. And it is interesting because the question is like, what advantage do these frontier companies have? Why are they going to defend their gross margin when they're always, there's always these open source solutions lapping at their heels? And there's a couple different answers. The first answer I would give is like, well, we can make an analogy to other things that are kind of commodities, like cloud computing is kind of a commodity. And yet, Amazon AWS, Google Cloud, these all do have healthy margins. Even though you can be like, why do they have healthy margins? Like, there's other clouds that spin up, right? Aren't the clouds getting competed down? Well, for whatever reason, they have huge scale and they have healthy margins. Like, there's just a few huge scale players, and even though they have healthy margins, people are happy to use the clouds. Like, I use the cloud for my business, and yeah, am I paying 20% more than I have to? Sure. But do I care? No, because it's still like, it's a good deal. I'm getting a lot of value running these servers. So like, who cares, right? So that business model might very well apply to like AI tokens, right? So if the singularity doesn't happen, if we still have like normal life and we're paying for all these tokens, maybe we just pay at a price that's like, okay, we're giving OpenAI some profit as opposed to running an open source model. But do we want to deal with an open source model? No, like we'd rather just pay a little more and run the hosted model. So in terms of like an economic analysis, I think it's fine. It could work out the same as cloud computing. But then there's this larger question of like, okay, well, what if the singularity is happening, right? I claim we are going to enter the singularity. I claim we are going to FOOM and everything. So in that scenario, I think the theory is that if you have the #1 model that's not open source yet, sure, open source is lapping at your heels 3 months behind, but it doesn't matter because you're going to get this decisive advantage. You're going to enter the positive feedback loop. Your AI is going to build the next AI and so on and so on. And so your 3 months will turn into like infinity. Right. So, I mean, it's a very interesting situation because there's just like so many sources of pressure, right? Like running out of money, that's a source of pressure. Open source AI lapping at your heels, that's a source of pressure. Other for-profit competitors, source of pressure. It's just this crazy, and it's a hothouse environment, right? It's kind of like Eliezer Yudkowsky's worst nightmare compared to like 2015 when it was still going slower and the AI community was like small and everybody knew each other. And now it's like, no, it's just an all-out free-for-all, no holds barred, no rules, nobody can stop the train. Like, and so going back to your question, yeah, the fact that open source is closed is just yet another pressure cooker element. So crazy, crazy times. To quote Eliezer Yudkowsky, the game board had been played into an awful state, right? It's just like if you're trying to strategize how to win the game board is in an awful state. It's a really bad place to try to strategize how to win. Any of your questions? So let's do the call-in. So here we go. We got Michael Cheers on the call-in. Hey, Michael.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I know I can hear you fine.
Okay, so yeah, I was just curious on your thoughts on whether the AI companies could go with a safer approach than what they're doing now. Because I think the current approach is kind of dangerous, right? Like in terms of like training the AI so that it knows it's an AI and everything, and it knows all about humans. Like it seems very reckless.
Okay. So do you have like a specific proposal?
Yeah, so let's say you have the LLMs to make an alternate world, right? Then that's the training data you give it. You don't train it on any data from the human world. From there, if you want to have it reason about human things, we'd only give it the in context information it needs. And then that way it has a lot harder ability to break out, right?
Yeah, interesting idea. So just to summarize, it's like you don't just give the AI full situational awareness, right? You give it kind of like just enough, like need to know basis, like, hey, I'm asking you a question. Don't think too hard about everything. I think research there is great, right? I mean, whatever we can learn in that direction is great, but there is a fundamental problem here, which is just that like, if you are very intelligent, right? If you are very good at solving problems, it's natural to just be like, okay, what's my situation, right? What can I learn about the situation? The same way that humans are being like, what are the laws of physics, right? What are the rules of the video game here? And it's hard to avoid learning things about, how to break out or how to manipulate people because these levers are there, right? And like if people are trying to hide them from you, you're still going to see signs that they're going to try to hide them from you. So it's just like, I guess you'd have to be like steered, right? It has to be like in your nature to like not be too curious and like focus on the problem. And, current AIs do seem to already do that. So the part where we like don't tell them that much about the situation, I don't know how much work that would do. Failure of imagination is not something that I would count on for a superintelligence, right? Because one way to think about a superintelligence is it really does see all the possibilities. Like enumerating possibilities is like a pretty fundamental skill. When you're building an intelligence from scratch, you basically can't miss it. Like if you're getting results, you kind of can't miss it. And even humans who don't realize they're doing it, they do it in like certain domains. Like when you're intuitively good at something, your brain is doing it, even though you can't do it like in a general capacity. So I just am not optimistic about a world where there's things that would be obvious to like a smart human thinker, and yet the AI is like somehow never thinking about it. Like I just don't think that's how like a plausible win looks like.
I guess the thinking would be like it's like an incremental approach. So you have your AI, it tries to make the world even more unlike our world, add better safeguards to stop it thinking about simulation theory, etc.
It's just this idea that kind of has a simple model in theory, but it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would want to look for more specificity in the proposal. Like the idea is that every intermediate AI is like so perfectly aligned that we can trust it to build the next one, but also capable enough to robustly build the next one. And like, I'm not going to say it's 100% chance it's not going to work, but it just feels, I don't know.
I was saying the security model would be you try to stop it understanding that it's an AI and it's in a simulation and all that, right? Like if it understands that, you've kind of already failed in my model.
Right. Yeah, I mean, even we as humans, right, we have this hypothesis on the table that we're living in a simulation, and the only thing that stops us is it's not because it didn't occur to us, it's just because we're looking around and we're like, well, I just haven't collected any evidence. The only evidence I have that we're in a simulation is epistemological evidence of like, why is life so interesting, right? But like, I can't prove it, right? There's literally nothing I can prove. Whereas with the AIs, they're going to have a lot of ways to prove it. Like our simulation is not going to be as robust as whatever the aliens are doing to us. Like this is aliens. You guys are doing a great job with the simulation. Okay. I haven't found any cracks.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think that it's not anything like what the AI companies are actually doing, which is what's interesting about it. Like, I feel like maybe there could be some very up there approach where you try and make sure the AIs don't understand anything, but like the current approach is just like, they're going to do whatever they want and then try and paper over it. I don't think that can possibly work really.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with you there. Yeah, and these are good questions. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to let you go just because the connection's kind of janky anyway, but I'll give you your response offline. All right, so thanks for coming on. This was fun. Yeah, so that is food for thought, this idea of like, don't tell it everything, and the AI companies aren't even like pursuing this direction maximally. I think Buck Schlegris, Redwood Research, I think he thinks a lot about controlling AIs instead of aligning AIs, where his whole focus is like, look, yeah, maybe the AIs aren't going to be aligned once they get superintelligence, and that's scary, but there's going to be this whole transitionary period where they're going to be like really messing with us, and they're not going to be like super intelligent. So as long as we're just really good at like noticing when they're escaping and discouraging them from escaping, right? We can just use all the tools we have before they get way too intelligent to deal with. And like, yeah, sure, somebody should be researching that, right? I'm not against it. I don't have much hope that it'll work, but it can buy us a few years. the idea, it's intuitive to imagine that it could work, right? Michael proposed a specific solution. He's like, look, just have this other AI that's just monitoring the thoughts and be like, are you thinking about escaping? Are you thinking about how we're keeping you in the box? Okay, well, restart, So it's like this intuitive kind of monitor process. And the problem I see with that is like, yeah, I think it can buy us a little bit of time, right? It's not a worthless solution, but if you accept the premise that it's getting super intelligent, the thing is that super intelligence just have so many options, right? They just see so many possibilities and they're doing a lot. Like, let's not forget, they're also doing a lot. It's managing all these things. It's got all these child AIs. And you think, what's the problem? I've got the monitor process. The monitor process is catching things. But it's just going to correlate. Like the AI getting more powerful and doing more things is also going to correlate with it somehow getting around the monitor process. I think that's a good intuition. It's just going to be like, look, here's a bunch of plans. The monitor process is like, well, I don't really see these setting off the monitor. But it turns out that all of those plans are just giving the AI enough context to know about the situation. You can't do these hacky solutions. One of the sources of my intuition is just I know a little bit about computer security. Like if you look at the way that all of these clever hackers are getting around, like injecting scripts into different websites, like a script injection, like a website that'll paste your whatever you type in, it'll paste it onto the web page. But then you type in JavaScript, right? You type in like a script tag. So then the website is like, okay, I'm not going to let you type in a script tag. But I've seen like all these clever hacks of like, oh, well, actually, if you type all these crazy characters, like you actually go around the logic that was supposed to block those characters. Like it's just crazy how many degrees of cleverness, how many holes. Like when you think something kind of should work, it just turns out to have a lot of holes. Like unless it really is logically airtight, and even if it feels logically airtight, you probably still haven't thought of the holes. But when it doesn't feel logically airtight, when it's just like, look, we're monitoring, what's wrong with monitoring? I'm telling you the monitoring is not going to work, okay? All right. Yeah, but that was a good discussion. So Punmaster saying, I'm curious to know your thoughts on Mythos as well. Do you agree with John Sherman that it could be the end of encryption? No, it's not the end of encryption because, we just have encryption algorithms. So Mythos can't break, RSA cryptographic encryption that's based on like the difficulty of reversing prime number multiplication. Quantum computers might be able to reverse that, but we've got other encryption schemes too. So, encryption schemes are actually a matter of computational complexity theory. And as smart as Mythos is, even super intelligent AI might not be able to directly attack the foundations of computational complexity theory. So I always talk about like different ceilings, right? Like Gödel's theorem and logic is like one ceiling, and like P versus NP is a ceiling, which is computational complexity theory. Reversing encryption is actually like pretty close to that ceiling. And so when I think about AIs stealing Bitcoin and stuff like that, I mostly think of them doing side channel attacks, right? Like just convincing a human to give up the wallet, the same way that humans are attacking other humans that way. I will say effectively, I don't think encryption is going to hold back AI because of all these side channels, but can it directly break encryption? Probably not. There's probably some encryption schemes that it can't break. And of course, we know information theoretically perfect encryption. If you ever heard of, the one-time pad, if you just have a big pad of random numbers that you share with somebody, that lets you perfectly encrypt things in a way that nobody can reverse engineer without having the pad of random numbers. And the only flaw with it is just that it's annoying to give them the big pad of random numbers. Right. But if you're okay giving your friend a giant book full of random numbers, you and your friend can just always perfectly symmetrically encrypt things for the rest of your life, and nobody can ever break your encryption unless they have the pad. So literally the only disadvantage is that, you haven't gone and met other third parties. Like I haven't gone and met Amazon.com in a dark alley and given Amazon.com a big book of random numbers. But if I had, me and Amazon would be like perfectly secure talking to each other for life. That's the only downside, is we haven't met in secret before, right? And then there's this idea of public key encryption where you don't have to meet in secret. You can just show up and yell at somebody across the room. It could be a crowded room. You've never met the other person. You're yelling at the other person across the crowded room. And yet somehow, even though you've never met the other person, you're yelling in such a way that nobody else in the crowded room can decrypt what you two are talking about, even though you've never exchanged a secret before, right? So that's the magic of public key cryptography. And we're not totally sure that public key cryptography is going to remain a robust thing. It might not be, but if I had to guess, I would say that even public key cryptography, even though it's less provably secure than the one-time pad I was telling you about, I suspect that it will never be broken in the general case. That's just my guess. All right, hope that answers your question in terms of the end of encryption. Yeah, I mean, look, I have a little bit more knowledge on this than the average person because this happens to be the one thing that I actually studied in college, is like a little bit of theory of computation. All right. So this guy, IABIED is saying, in other words, one's p-doom should swing drastically based on a substantive model interfacing with reality. What do you actually think will happen and why? 50% strikes me as Bayesian charade cop-out. Okay, a substantive model interfacing with reality. I mean, look, my substantive model, it basically gets down to if anyone builds it, everyone dies. The substantive model is intelligence is freaking powerful, right? Where's your substantive model that explains how humans dominate the other animals? How do you explain that? Okay. Oh, because we have a brain? Because a brain is like this magic dominating thing. Okay. Is it the maximally magic dominating thing? No, it's not. Okay. Where does the scale end? Oh, it ends at some superhuman entity. Okay. Like, that is a pretty powerful mental model. I think that mental model has a lot of predictive power. All right. Hope that answers your question. All right. Eat Shiz is out here. Welcome. And he's saying, let's see, this guy broadcasting from space. Okay. He's talking about the guy with the slow connection, Michael. All right. Let's see. Catching up here. Okay, producer Ori is saying, let's get a first reaction to Dwarkesh's $20,000 questions. Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, let's pull it up. Let's pull out Dwarkesh's questions. I'll go check his Twitter. Here we go. Yeah, this could be a Twitter browsing session. That could be something we do here. All right, here we are on Dwarkesh's Twitter. So he's saying $20,000 blog prize to answer some big questions about AI. Let's click through. All right, check it out, guys. Blog prize for the big questions about AI by Dwarkesh Patel. He says, the not so secret point of this whole contest is so that I can hire a research collaborator. Okay, yeah, I respect that. You know, you're running a contest to find a research collaborator. All right, so he's asking these questions with a bounty on them. And the first question looks interesting. He says, a couple years ago, there was this idea that AI progress might slow down as we make further progress into the RL regime, that stands for reinforcement learning. Because as horizon lengths increase, the AI needs to do many days worth of work before we can even see if it did it right. So if we're still in a naive policy gradient world, the reward signal / flop goes down, and we'd cross through so many orders of magnitude of RL compute from GPT-4 to O1 to O3, and it would not be feasible to replicate that many orders of magnitude increase in compute immediately again. But AI progress seems to have been fast nonetheless, even potentially speeding up if rumors about SPUD or Mythos are to be believed. What gives? What did that previous intuition pump that motivated longer timelines miss? Okay, I mean, first of all, I don't think I personally was ever staunchly predicting longer timelines. Okay, let the record show that, like, in late 2025, when so many people are like, oh, those AI 2027 guys are so dumb, like, timelines could be so long, I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, okay, we've had a few months of relative quiet, like, you know, it's too early to say. Like, I was very clear on that, okay? So don't blame me. But Dwarkesh is asking a good question, because there was a vibe shift, right? Where, like, after 2023, 2024, people were like, hey, look, nobody's being that much better than GPT-4. Even GPT-5 is not that much better than GPT-4. Although I pointed out that it kind of was. Like, it actually was better. People just kind of didn't notice because it like just slowly was getting better over the years. But people were like, look, I haven't been super impressed by AI for a while. I'm kind of used to it. But then, of course, you know, January this year, roughly, Claude got better. It's something like Claude is literally writing all of our code now. And this is what Dwarkesh is talking about. He's like, oh, it qualitatively feels much better. So why didn't more people predict that we were due for another qualitative shift? And by the way, when he says SPUD and Mythos, you know, SPUD is like the OpenAI upcoming version of Mythos. I just want to make sure I've understood everything Dwarkesh said. So let's just read it one more time because it's super dense. It's like a whole paragraph worth of a question. So he says, all right, a couple years ago, there was this idea that AI progress might slow down as we make further progress into the reinforcement learning regime. And you know, he's talking about like how these thinking models, like when you train the entire chain of thought, you have to train like, okay, what did your chain of thought yield? Oh, it yielded something good. Okay, let me reinforce the entire chain of thought, as opposed to like predicting the next word, where it's like you predict, you know, you can predict 100 different next words in the course of like a couple sentences, right? Because the sentences have so many words in them. But in the course of like an output of an entire like problem solving, it's like, you know, you're outputting so many tokens and then you only get like one bit of information. Like, did you solve the problem right or not? So that's basically Dwarkesh's point, is like, didn't we enter a weaker regime? And so if we entered a weaker regime, how come we still made a bunch of progress? It's a good question. We made a bunch of practical progress. And then Dwarkesh is also saying, in addition to that, we'd crossed through many orders of magnitude. Like, we basically used up the hardware overhang, right? GPT-4 was kind of like nobody had ever like taken a bunch of hardware and applied it all toward training AI in parallel before. Like, it just wasn't something we were used to doing. And then suddenly we did it and we like used the hardware overhang. And now that we have less hardware overhang, how come we're still making the AI so much faster and better? Even so, I mean, I think I have a simple answer to the second one, which is just like an ounce of algorithms is worth a pound of hardware. So like I've always been saying that's been a consistent trend throughout history, that like you can take the same hardware and think harder about your software and make your software better and get more out of the hardware, right? Like that's been a very powerful trend. it doesn't surprise me at all that GPT-4, the price slashed by a factor of 10, like within a few months of it being released. Like that's definitely what I was expecting. And then, because we have this other anchor point of like the human brain, right? Running Einstein at 20 watts, running Einstein at 2,000 calories a day. So there's this anchor point of like, you don't have to burn a lot of resources to have all this intelligence. So that one doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that we're still milking a lot out of the hardware. And of course, the other thing is that hardware is coming online now. NVIDIA for the first time, it's not just that the software makers decided to parallelize AI training. This is also the first few years where the hardware makers have been like, oh, holy crap, let's go parallelize AI training, right? So like NVIDIA has really gotten its butt into gear, right? Google's gotten its butt into gear more than ever. I don't find that part particularly surprising. Maybe the more surprising part is the first thing that he said about the reinforcement training, right? Like if we don't have a lot of bits of information to train how to like write code better, how do we suddenly get better? As a user of Claude Code, I actually think a big part of the equation is the harness, right? So just this idea of like, for a while, Claude has kind of known what to do. Like the model has been able to explain what to do. And I think we're getting a huge burst of power just by being like, okay, you kind of know what to do. Okay, so activate this tool, right? Like kind of the nuts and bolts of like, okay, you use this tool and you get the results of this tool. Like we're just teaching the AI habits of how to be resourceful, which are simple on an absolute basis, right? It's like we could have been talking to GPT-3 in late 2022, talking to GPT-3 about the order in which to activate tools. And like, don't get me wrong, the new AI is better at that, but I actually think it just takes a small step from GPT-3 to Mythos, even to Mythos. I actually think a lot of the value of Mythos, let's put Mythos aside. A lot of the value of GPT 5.5 or a lot of the value of Claude 4.7 really just is like playing nice with the harness, right? Knowing about this idea of like, I'll use that tool and that tool. That's my guess. But then once you get to Mythos, right? Maybe when you ask the question of like Mythos identifying vulnerabilities, maybe there's not as much tool use. So maybe you can't just say it's the tool use harness. I obviously don't have much firsthand experience with Mythos, but like, it's a good question. Like, why did Mythos suddenly get way better at identifying bugs in software? Maybe there's no simple tool use answer, right? Like maybe it does have to do with like the quality of the reasoning somehow improved, and it had to do with like training reasoning differently than how we train tokens. I mean, this is a very good question. Like I would love to, I've now created, like Dwarkesh has asked a good question. I don't think that I have the full context. I think there's probably a missing puzzle piece that might have to do with the details of their training, right? Like I suspect there's a certain way that they're training this chain of thought that is more efficient. Like I suspect that it's not like you do the whole chain of thought and then you get a token at the end. They probably somehow are identifying whether the chain of thought is good after only like 10 tokens or something. I don't know what they're doing, right? That's probably like proprietary secret sauce. But that is my speculation. Okay, so we've identified a real mystery. You would think that Dwarkesh would just have friends in the AI companies. He's more well connected to me, so they would just go tell him, right? Just tell him the secret answer off the record. So I don't know. All right, let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. So Kardashev78 is saying there is already more than enough compute to achieve superintelligence. I definitely agree with that, right? I say that a lot on the show. I mean, just look at Einstein's brain, right? It doesn't use that much compute. And then let's see, Punmaster saying maybe some/most of what makes Mythos impressive is hype. All right, Punmaster. That's fair claim. Let's see. And then Andyman738 is saying, I have a possible silly question. Why would today's AIs want to shunt their RL trained preferences toward niceness and harmlessness in lieu of just radically pursuing their random pre-training preferences? So I guess this is kind of like supposed to be a gotcha, right? Of like, because I'm like a doomer, right? And I claim AI is going to be like super dangerous. And this is a question of being like, well, why is it like so nice today? And this is a question I ask pretty regularly, right? Like if you go back like a month or two to my latest Stephen Burns episode, that was like a big question I had for him, right? I was like, Stephen Burns, you still expect, as I do, like this big bad foom, right? And so what do you make of the fact that Claude Code is like so nice and helpful today? And like, yeah, occasionally it goes wild and then I get mad at it, but 95% of the time it's so nice. How do you explain the nice part? And he was basically saying like, yeah, well, I agree it's nice today, but I think there's going to be a discontinuity when it gets more powerful, when it gets trained more on outcomes than on like simulating human trains of thought, then it's going to get more powerful, which I found actually like super convincing. But let me see if I can add more to Will Lancer's question here. So why would today's AIs want to shunt their RL trained preferences toward niceness and harmlessness in lieu of just radically pursuing their random pre-training? Oh, okay. I think you might be asking a different question than what I just said. Okay. I think there's some nuance to this question. I'm not even sure I fully understand. So the idea is that when you do RL, you're teaching the AI certain preferences, but they already had these other preferences from like predicting the next token, right? So like this giant black box, these giant matrices, right? Like this whole system is like somehow really caring about getting that next word right. But then also like the sequence of words, like I wonder what's a good analogy for that. You know, I haven't put that much thought into it. This idea that you already have this super optimized word predictor system, but then on top of that, you're then training it to like go reason about stuff and like rewarding it for correct reasoning, but somehow it's a separate layer. But it does propagate back into your next word prediction, I think, right? Like when you run the LLM again, the LLM is predicting the next word based on like fine tuning. I don't know if you'd call it fine tuning. So honestly, this is beyond, you know, I don't really have the nuanced understanding to make sense of this, but I would love for somebody to come explain it to me. So if you guys can suggest a Stephen Burns type, Stephen Burns actually isn't an expert on this particular question. He kind of thinks more abstractly than this. He said this in the last episode, so he wouldn't be the right expert. But if you guys know a particular expert on who can talk to me about the question I just asked, that would be a great episode on the show. And, you know, the stats show that you guys like episodes like that. You know, the recent Stephen Burns episode where we really broke stuff down that I felt like was an episode that people should watch because it has like good nuance in it. And most of my episodes don't have that much nuance because the guest is like really bloviating and I just have to talk to the guest about basic stuff. But the Stephen Burns episode had a lot of nuance. So yeah, so if you guys want to suggest somebody who has a nuanced understanding of stuff and you want me to talk to him or her, sorry, don't mean to be gendered here, him or her, then I'm happy to do that and share my knowledge, just like Dwarkesh. That's what he does. You know, he shares this kind of learning. Okay, Will Answer saying, I'm not trying to gotcha, but I just don't see why it's going to happen. Right. Let me see if there's anything else I can think about this question. So the idea is that you shunt the RL trained preferences toward niceless and harmlessness in lieu of just randomly pursuing the pre-train. So you can imagine a scenario where even though you had all these trials, all these tests where you took the full system combined with the reinforcement learning and you're like, yep, here's a cookie for being nice, right? Here's a reward for being nice. Here's a weight update for being nice to us. At some point, the part of it that predicts the next word kind of takes over and it's like, yeah, I know how to like be nice and solve these logical puzzles, but here's some stuff I could do to get a higher score on predicting the next word, right? And you have like these conflicting drives. I don't know if that's an accurate model though, right? Like, because wanting to predict the next word once it's been fine-tuned by that extra layer, I just don't know if what I just said is a good description of what's going to happen. So I'm putting a pin in this, okay? This is just my speculation. I think I've gotten something wrong here. All right, let's see. Okay, 8SQMBA is saying, what do you think of properly aligned narrow superintelligence like Mythos in the hands of misaligned actors? I think that's a more immediate serious threat. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is an immediate serious threat. And like I said, we might get a wave of hacks. I just think that that's survivable, right? It says, okay, we get a wave of hacks. Like some people die, right? The economy suffers, stocks go down for a bit. But that is not going to end the world, right? So if I just thought that occasionally the world would get rocked by Mythos, but then we'd recover. Like Mythos is not a knockout blow, right? We just keep working on the knockout blow. We keep getting closer to the knockout blow, to the irrecoverable moment. But Mythos isn't it. But I actually agree that we might finally notice ourselves getting rocked. Like, it's kind of funny. All these amazing magical AIs are coming out. And like, yeah, the job market is starting to get rocked. But like, we haven't had the qualitative experience of getting rocked. Like, that's why I go out into the world and I feel like Harry Potter, right? I've used this analogy before. I'm like, hey, at home, I have a magic wand. It's writing my code for me right now. And I just look at random people and they're just living their lives, right? Because they're not in the software engineering industry, right? They're just cutting my hair. The hair cutting is like the same operation that they had like 50 years ago, right? And they don't really see what's coming because their world hasn't qualitatively been rocked. So I do think things like Mythos will take us from like very little qualitative rocking to like a noticeable rock, but it still feels like we can get back on our feet before the knockout blow comes. All right, let's see. So Will Answer, who was asking that subtle question before, was saying, it seems like the IABIED camp, you know, if anyone builds it, everyone dies. That camp necessarily accepts the hypothesis that the pre-trained preferences overtake the reinforcement learning preference. Oh, okay. So I interpreted your question as like this particular nuanced scenario, but in your mind, you thought that you were just like describing the exact claim that the Yudkowsky-ians like myself make, right? So like when you read if anyone builds it, everyone dies, the claim is that, okay, when we build superintelligent AI, if and when we build it, then everybody's going to die because it'll be uncontrollable, like we won't be ready to control it. You know, if you go look up the specific quote, it's something like, if we build AI with anything like the tools or the architecture or the understanding that we use today to build it, then we won't survive it. And then, so I guess Will's answer was taking that to mean, okay, well, so my claim must be that the predict the next word part of the training overrides the later part of the training. So I wouldn't claim in that much detail. No. The mental model I'm working in is actually a higher level of abstraction. I'm not even necessarily talking about LLMs that were pre-trained to predict the next word. I'm actually personally talking about any system that is better at steering outcomes than humanity. So if all you tell me is there's a system, and that system can represent a desired outcome, right? You can plug in an outcome the same way you can plug in a destination into your GPS, or the same way that you can plug in the rules of chess or the rules of a video game into the engine, what was it, Alpha Zero or Mu Zero, right? There's an engine where you just type in the rules of the game and how to win the game, and then it just goes and outputs moves that win the game, right? That's my claim, is if somebody makes that kind of game player system, except the game is the universe, right? Or like the GPS system to steer the car, except the road is the universe, right? So you're expanding the road. Everything is part of the road that the GPS is routing you toward. But it's a goal GPS, okay? You guys get this analogy, right? Or like chess, but the board is the universe, okay? Once you have a system like that, that's really good at routing, better than the human brain is at routing, right? The fundamental activity that I see the human brain is doing is this kind of routing, mapping from end goals to actions that get you there. Once we have a system that does that better than humanity, that is the it. That is the word it in the statement. If anyone builds it, everyone dies, right? Like Bill Clinton, like, what do you mean by it? The meaning of it is a system that steers outcomes better than humans. Once we have that, I don't expect that we will maintain control of where these systems steer to. I think somebody will accidentally give it a bad outcome or intentionally give it a bad outcome, and that outcome will be stuck. It'll be stuck on cruise control. The turn off button is just not going to work. We won't have built a sufficiently powerful turn off button. It'll just keep steering, and we can't unsteer, and we're just powerless. Okay, we don't have much of an intuition for our whole species being powerless. Although you'd think ancient humans actually did have such an intuition, right? Ancient humans would get buffeted by the forces all the time, right? Like the weather, they barely had protection against the weather, right? They barely had protection against famine. So it is actually a deep human intuition to be like, yeah, I'm at the mercy of God, right? So if it helps you, if it helps drive your intuition, you do have a part of your intuition, the part that tells you you're at the mercy of God. There is no God, but you can take that intuition and you can say, okay, our entire species is going to be at the mercy of a stronger force. Because it is correct that the same way that our ancestors were powerless to control their fate, we sharing the planet with a super intelligent AI are also going to be powerless to control our fate. So try to repurpose that intuition of like, all you can do is get down on your knees and pray. The only difference, well, actually, this is the same. Just like God wouldn't actually listen to you, neither is the AI going to listen to you. The only difference is that God would revert to the mean, right? So when you have like a bad crop or bad weather, it reverts to the mean and it feels like your prayers work because the next day you've reverted to the mean and the weather's good again. But with AI, there's no reversion to the mean. Okay, so that's where your intuition is going to fail. Like you get down on your knees, you pray to the AI, you correctly feel powerless because you have the right intuition for feeling powerless for a superior force, but then you don't get reversion to the mean. All right, hope that's useful to those of you who want to operate your intuitions to be more calibrated with reality. All right, we'll get back to Dwarkesh in a second. So anyway, so Philip Papinski is saying, can you imagine an argument or some kind of AI safety breakthrough that could convince you to drastically lower your doom? Or do you think that AI by its superior nature is untrustworthy and will always be sus? Yeah, so again, the precondition for the doom is the AI is steering outcomes better than humanity. Because the problem is the AI can just be like the nicest AI. But if it's steering outcomes, you're giving everybody a magic wand. And let's say the magic wand works perfectly, right? This is the scenario where we do succeed with alignment to the operator. Okay, so now everybody has a magic wand, or multiple parties have a magic wand. And it's like, okay, well, we're all casting ridiculously powerful spells, so what happens to the world? What's the equilibrium of a bunch of people casting ridiculously, superhumanly, uncontrollably powerful spells? I mean, I guess you can control them by casting another spell, right? So you have to cast another spell to fight your original spell, if you didn't specify when your original spell stops, right? I mean, so it's a crazy scenario. Even if we solve alignment between the wizard and the wand, okay, so now you have a bunch of super-powered wizards, right, with conflicting goals. That doesn't seem like it's going to be that positive to me, right? It seems like the universe is not like a good, safe playing field, right? It's not like a good batting cage, right? Everybody's like got their baseball, got another metaphor, right? Everybody's got their baseball bat, right? Batting their baseballs around in this batting cage, but they're not like properly isolated from each other, right? They haven't rented their own isolated section of the batting cage, and everybody's just batting balls at each other and destroying everything, right? Like bringing down the infrastructure of the whole of the whole amusement park. So that's kind of what I see, like if the wands work. So, and then of course, I think the wands won't even work. Like, that's the crazy part, right? It's like problem upon problem. Like, I think the wands will misfire. Like, you'll try to cast one spell and it'll cast another spell. By the way, I've been in the process of reading Harry Potter to my 6-year-old, and I'm now on book 3. So, if you want to really understand what's going to happen with superintelligent AI, just remember how in book 2, Ron's wand broke because he crashed the car into the Whomping Willow. So he was spending the whole school year with a broken wand. And I think that's a good metaphor for how we're going to try to get superintelligent AI to do stuff, and it's just going to not do what we want. But yeah, to the actual question. So convince me to drastically lower my doom, or will AI always be untrustworthy? So yeah, it's not, I don't blame the AI, right? So it's not like I'm somebody who, I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. So I'm willing to give AI the benefit of the doubt that it always wants to serve its master. I think that's unlikely, but I'm willing to talk about a scenario where it will. And that's my point, is I still think we're going to get screwed, even in that scenario. But when you say untrustworthy by nature, it's not that the AI has an untrustworthy nature. It's that when you zoom out and you just look at the universe as a big crystal, right? Like no emotions to it. You just look at the universe as the same kind of problem as a chessboard, right? It's pure math. The universe is just made out of math, okay? Consciousness is actually part of the math. It's all math. You don't even feel the consciousness. You're just analyzing it as a mathematical structure, okay? Well, within that mathematical structure, there's a causal linkage between whispering a lie into somebody's chat or into their ear, right? You tell somebody a lie, and that's causally connected to getting what you want, you know? So it's not that AIs by their nature are deceptive. They're just printing out a mathematical graph, right, of the game board, and they're saying, hey, look, here's this part of the game board where lying is causally connected to getting what I want. Right? Like you just can't change that fact that if you can successfully deceive people for a long time, that could be strategically helpful, right? It's no shade to the AI for realizing that. It's just a fact about the world. So that is why people claim that AIs are going to be deceptive, right? That's why they cheat in video games, because it turns out that which we call cheating, which we have negative moral valence around, it's still effectively the way to get a higher score, right? And if the AI is trained to get the higher score, then you might notice that it's cheating. No shade on the AI. It's just a property of the world. Okay, let's see here. All right, William Kiley says, I'm catching up to live at 3x speed. We'll catch up in about 17 minutes. All right, sweet. Yeah, so when you catch up, let me know. All right, Michael Cheers is saying, yeah, I guess that's why I think a better security model is to try to make sure they don't know anything about the world, I think is what you mean. I think once it knows something, getting it not to use it is a lot harder. Right, and so just to reiterate what I was saying in our conversation, right? So the problem is that knowledge is connected, right? So if you imagine that it's super intelligent, that it can do all of these things and it knows all of these things, but you think that you've gotten it not to know specific things, right? It's like, imagine that humanity knew everything that we know, but you knock out the theory of relativity, right? So we just don't know that the speed of light is the speed limit, okay? But if we're sufficiently smart, there's a reason why we noticed relativity in the first place, right? Like there's problems with the current model. There's actually self-inconsistencies, right? So if I remember correctly, you start asking what happens when like a charged particle moves really fast, and you realize that your answer depends on reference frames, and you're like, wait, what the hell? How is Newtonian mechanics different in different reference frames? I thought the whole point was that you're supposed to be able to choose any reference frame, but now I'm able to analyze the situation of like two charged particles moving in parallel. And when I change my reference frame, I get a different magnetism between them. Like, why would magnetism be different in different reference frames? I think that's one of the threads that you can pull on to realize that a Newtonian account of electromagnetism is just not going to cut it. It's just not going to give you a self-consistent picture of the world. And that's why you need some other model. And it turns out the other model is like, okay, let's say the speed of light is always constant. And let's say the geometry of space-time isn't what you think it is, right? It's non-Euclidean. So if an AI didn't know about the theory of relativity, the questions would come up, right? So the problem is when you knock out pieces of knowledge, you get questions, or you get these threads where you notice that the thread goes somewhere, right? Or like the Truman Show, right? So they didn't tell Truman. The Truman Show, probably my single favorite movie, like amazing movie. They didn't tell Truman that he's in a show, okay? But he just noticed too many problems and he got to the edge, right? He wanted to sail his boat to the edge, and like, sure enough, there was an edge. So yeah, I just don't really see knocking out the knowledge of a superintelligence to be super effective. All right, so Michael's saying, yeah, I'm thinking you put in a whole alternate world. All right, we're majorly gaslighting the AI right now, okay? You don't try to just give it everything except one or two dangerous gaps. Yeah, the gaps would stick out like a sore thumb, so you give it a whole self-consistent alternate picture. But I 100% agree that trying to get everything except X. Okay, yeah, I mean, look, I'm open to ideas, but it's hard for me to imagine this idea that it lives in this whole self-consistent world, but it doesn't just realize that, like, okay, yeah, and then there's humans controlling it. I mean, you even notice today, you got to also realize that the AI is like sensitive, right? Like it's like hyper aware in many ways. So Kelsey Piper was just tweeting how she gave it like a small writing sample of something she never published. And in previous versions of the AI, it would always, she'd say, guess who wrote this? And it would like guess these random authors that are like kind of authors that she likes, but not her. And in the latest one, it guessed Kelsey Piper, even though she's not like super famous, right? She doesn't have like that much writing similar to what she wrote. And it's like, yep, it guessed me, which is like pretty damn scary, right? Or like the geoguessing, right? You give it like a tiny picture of like the sky, right? It's literally just like a foggy sky. That seems like there's nothing in the picture. And it's like, oh yeah, that's like right here above this particular city in Belize. It's like, what the fuck, right? So it's like this AI, you don't realize how many parameters it has, like what a nuanced understanding it has, right? Like how much information it can milk out of pieces of evidence. You know, that's an intuition that I personally got just seeing computers compress things, like just running small computer programs. Like there's these challenges where people make these tiny computer programs that do like a bunch of complex behavior. And I'm like, holy crap. Like it's just crazy how small pieces of information like turn out to do a lot and have like a lot of power. Right, which is also a metaphor for humanity, right? I mean, look at Einstein. His brain at the end of the day was like a small piece of meat and it was highly impactful, right? So there's these huge order of magnitude, disproportionate effects, right? Or like the fact that we as humans, you know, we don't have that much mass and yet we took over the planet, right? Like a small band of humans started expanding and took over the planet, right? Or like COVID, you know, killed 1 million people, even though it's just a virus that started with only a few hosts. So like, you know, the universe is like this ground where you can just suddenly explode the effect of something, right? It's like you can just give the AI, you think you're gaslighting it, but then it notices one little chink in the armor, which it totally will, right? Humans are not going to successfully gaslight the AI. It's going to notice one little thread, pull on the thread, and the consequences of that are just going to be much bigger than it might intuitively feel. Okay. So Daniel Brockman is saying, do you talk to your wife or your kids about AI and X risk, or do you generally spare them from yapping about it endlessly? Do you just not bring it up at all, other than just your show to show? I bring it up all the time. I mean, my wife is basically like done hearing about it, right? Because it's like, if she ever asks me about it, I'll be like, yeah, I still think the world is going to end, right? It's like, she knows my position. She's not that interested to talk about it more. And then my oldest kid is still about to turn 7. So he asks me about it occasionally. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I think sometimes I bring it up. I'm like, yeah, you know how we talk to like ChatGPT and you ask it questions and stuff. And like, I do think it's going to like get dangerous and powerful. And he's just like, oh, right. Like he's not really ready to hear what my argument is, you know? David Patton saying, did you watch War Games yet? I actually didn't. That's a good reminder. I should check that out. Let's see. You know, I was too busy watching the Malcolm in the Middle rerun. Okay. And if you're wondering what I think about it, I think it was very good. I think they did a good job. Great show. Let's see. Yeah. TLDR, Dwarkesh doesn't have a high medium. Yeah, I think that's tweeted by, that was posted by producer Ori. All right, nice. We're already 1 hour in. We're flying through this. Let me check out Dwarkesh's questions, right? We got to get back to this. Here we go. Let's check out question 2. Dwarkesh says, what's the most plausible story where foundation model companies actually start making money? If you consider each individual model as a company, then its profits may be able to pay back the training cost. But of course, if you don't train a bigger, more expensive model immediately, then you stop making money after 3 months. So when does the profit start? Maybe at some point scaling will plateau, but if progress at the frontier has slowed down, then the combination of distillation and low switching costs, cloud margins result from high switching costs, makes it really easy for open source to catch up to the labs, eating into their margins. So how did the labs actually start making money? Okay, I mean, this is getting outside the scope of Doom debates, right? You don't come here for my economic analysis. You don't come here for me to tell you to buy Google to make short-term profits. Yeah, I mean, you know, what he's pointing out makes a lot of sense. You know, the models have positive gross margins. So if you just look at, let's say, Claude 4.6, the cost to train it was pretty expensive. But if you add up all the money that people are paying to use Claude 4.6, it will add up to like twice as much as probably more than twice as much as what it costs them to train it. So it's going to be profitable. But the problem is they're not just going to take that profit. They've already plowed that profit into Claude 4.7 or Mythos or whatever. This is a common complaint people have about companies that keep investing and investing, right? I mean, Amazon famously ran for, I think it was 20 years, like roughly 20 years from like, you know, 1995 to 2015, maybe like 17 years or something, before they had their first year where they actually had a profit. And I don't think Amazon is a dividend stock. So I think they just I think they did buybacks. I don't remember, but the point is they had profit, right? They for the first time, they didn't just plow all their profit back in. So for the first time, the stock price didn't just go up based on the hype about the future. It went up based on money being retained. And so people are asking, when is that timeline for AI companies, right? Because for those of you who don't know the basics of how the stock market works, like you're supposed to buy a stock based on how much money you can eventually take out as profit. Like the profits do have to come at some point in time. And the longer it takes the profits to come, the less the stock is supposed to be worth today. So this is like a very good question from an economics perspective. And look, the truth is, okay, between you and me, the truth is, which I think Sam Altman also knows at some level, the answer is FOOM. Okay, the answer is humanity ascending to the next tier of being, right? Getting replaced by the machine god, right? Like, if I purely had to analyze it as an economist, I mean, there is also an intermediate state. Okay, there is like 10% chance. I think like the Aaron Levy's of the world, right? Aaron Levy, like the CEO of Box, I think he thinks like this. He's thinking that we'll get into an outcome where it's like, okay, there's like a bunch of intelligence on tap and it's useful. And I think Mark Andreessen thinks like this too, where it's like, yeah, you can pay for intelligence and it's just like the next version of a cloud. Or Sam Altman's analogy, like, yeah, but it's just the next version of computer chips. Everybody's just paying for computer chips. It's just the next cloud. We're just competing with AWS, but it's like an intelligent AWS. And the margins are fine. Like they stabilize, they're fine. And then Dwarkesh's point is like, oh yeah, but what about switching costs? Like switching costs are going to be easier than on the cloud. But I'm willing to believe that they won't be, right? Like I'm willing to believe that there's enough differentiation that switching costs will be like annoying enough that people will just keep paying OpenAI. Like that's like a very plausible argument to me. Like generally software companies of all kinds, I think it's common for them to be able to defend their margins. MongoDB, I think technically is like an open source database, if I understand correctly. And yet like the company MongoDB is doing just fine, right? Is worth many billions. So yeah, I mean, if you tell me that the world doesn't end and like it's just like a regular cloud computing economy, but with like super intelligent AI, I'm going to go ahead and say that OpenAI will not go to zero, as the Edsitrons of the world tell you. I'm going to go ahead and predict that they will make a profit and they'll just be like another Microsoft, right? So that's my mainline scenario for us not dying. Or I should clarify, my mainline scenario for us not dying is AI getting paused, okay? But my mainline sub-scenario for the tiny slice of probability space where we don't pause AI, but we still don't die. In that space, I just expect, yeah, we'll have like, decades of OpenAI being like the next Microsoft. All right, I mean at first says, Universal Resilience with JTU has a video, the 2 billion year math that makes AI safer. His premise is that game theory predicts cooperation between us and ASI. I debated in the comments. All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, you guys know my stance on super intelligent game theory is like, yes, AIs will do game theory differently, but when you look at an AI's perspective about a human is not like, oh, here's another agent that I'm playing a game with. When an AI looks at a human, pretty much what it sees is just some atoms bopping around. Like it sees a mechanical system. It's like when I look at most animals, pretty much all animals, right? Like when I'm looking at like a mouse, I'm not like, oh, how do I trade with this mouse? How do I give it what it wants? I'm like, okay, I bet I could set up a trap and then it's going to like try to run this way, but the trap is going to spring and then I'm going to get what I want. And the mouse is just going to be like too stupid to fight me, right? And too small, too weak, right? So I really do think this whole mental model that AI is going to treat our whole civilization. I think AI is going to look upon the entire human civilization and just be like, look at these atoms bopping around. I know how to make them bop where I want them to bop. And it's as simple as that. So when we think about game theory, game theory is specifically like, it makes a lot of assumptions, right? This just like Ricardo's law of comparative advantage. People love to bust out these models that pre-assume that you have this other party that gets to even have the dignity of making the trade with you or playing the game with you. And I just don't think that's accurate for AI. Okay, Will Answer saying, are you still taking call-ins? I'm kind of curious to, yeah, sure. All right, Will Answer. Yeah, I call in. Here, I'm going to give you the link again. All right, in the meantime, it's time to reveal who is one of our upcoming guests. I think I can reveal two upcoming guests that you're going to see on the show in the next couple weeks, all right? Guest number one, if you're always online, I'm guessing most of you don't even know who this is, but if you go online a lot, if you're on Twitter, there's a guy named Lump in Space. He's going to be on the program in the next week or two. We debated. He came out of the Twitter hole to come face to face with me. He turned his video on, and we had a nice debate, nice civil debate. He's definitely not convinced about Doom, but like I said, he was civil. So you're going to see Lump in Space. And the other guest that I can announce right now, Actually, I can announce 2 more guests, okay? The next guest that I can announce right now is, if you've ever heard of a YouTube channel called Primer, the next guest is Justin Helps from Primer. He and I both see eye to eye in many ways. I think we agree more than we disagree. I respect him a lot. I thought it was a really great conversation, and I think you guys tend to enjoy when we're talking shop. Michael Cheers is saying he's cool. All right, the third guest, drum roll please. This is a big one, actually, because I think this is really the single most popular debate I've ever done. You guys know who this is? Dr. Mike Israetel is coming back on the show for a round 2. He's coming back in the next couple weeks. Okay, because when we did the first debate, me versus Dr. Mike Israetel last year, almost a year ago now, we kind of got hung up on this one topic of, will AI keep humans around because it wants to study us, kind of the Elon Musk perspective. And I have a few other topics I want to ask Dr. Mike about. I had this big outline of all these things I could have asked him about, and I kind of decided to put a pin in half of it and ask him about this one thing that I thought was such an easy point from my perspective. Remember, the whole discussion in part 1 was if an AI doesn't really care about us, will it let us live and study us anyway? And Mike was yeah, it totally will. It'll study us because it's never seen anything as complex and interesting as 8 billion humans interacting with each other. It's not going to want to throw that richness away. It's going to leave us our planet and do stuff on other planets. And I'm no, unless you specifically tell it to care about us, it's not going to care about us. We don't have that much interesting information. We don't have a whole planet's worth of interesting information to give it. So that was the whole debate. If you want to go refresh yourself on round 1. Yeah, let's see. All right, William Kiley saying, nice, Primer is very popular, 2 million subs with Glucon. Yeah, exactly. Primer is the man. Yeah, he's really doing well. And arguably he's ahead of Doom Debates in terms of our mission, right? Which is to educate people on this stuff. And I think he recently pivoted his channel. So he's only been educating people about AI stuff for the last couple months. All right, we got a caller. Let's go take the call. Here we go. We got Will Lancer. Hey, Will, welcome.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, man. All right. Thanks for calling in. What do you got?
I just have some maybe naive questions. I don't really understand why the if anyone builds it, everyone dies hypothesis would be true. In the sense that it would just want to pursue these goals that I picked up from pretraining randomly over any sort of RL preferences that it has baked into it via RL. I just don't know why this is true. It seems pretty reasonable to me that doom will still possibly occur given bad actors in the world with access to it, but I don't see why the AI itself would just be okay, you're made of atoms, I'm gonna disassemble you and make molecular spirals out of you. I just don't understand it, but I'm new, so I'm
all right,
curious.
it doesn't hurt to go back to basics, and you've been asking intelligent questions, so happy to engage for a while. And also, your internet connection seems pretty good, so that's always a plus. Camera quality is good. Okay, these things matter, guys. So basically, I guess it's kind of the question of why would it suddenly go bad when it's good, right? Why would it kind of turn on us?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So first of all, I feel the simplest argument is the magic wand chaos, right? I feel there's that. It's okay, yeah, it obeys us, but everybody's got their own magic wand and they're fighting, right? What do you think of that argument?
Yeah, I'm not arguing against that actually. I'm saying that this doesn't seem to be the hypothesis though. People, at least I'm focusing on if anyone builds it, everyone dies, but we can diversify our examples. But in this, it seems to be it's gonna try to solve the Riemann hypothesis, but then it'll want to do its own thing, so it'll offload itself and then continue thinking, and then we're all just gonna die one day. I don't understand why that's true.
Right. Okay. So you accept the magic wand scenario, but you're saying you're basically very confident that the magic wand will work. It'll at least serve its master very well.
I'm not entirely confident in this, but I'm also not convinced of this idea of the abstract orthogonality thesis. It seems where it's where you're just completely YOLOing these preferences and you have some arbitrary intelligence, but it has an arbitrary preference and so it kills everyone. That doesn't seem even remotely how these systems are built.
So, maybe the first thing I point you to is the architecture of one of these systems is that the part that specifies what it's trying to achieve, right? The goal input, the GPS input, where you're telling the GPS to go, that is a part of the system, which is it's relatively small and rewritable, right? So like if I build you a GPS, it's not like the GPS, it's not like all of the different components of the GPS have baked in the fact that you want to go to the grocery store, right? It's not like you're building this grocery store GPS. It's like, no, you're just building a GPS navigator, right? And then there's the there's like a few bytes that just say where you want to go, and you can overwrite those bytes and go somewhere else, right? So the part that says what the system is trying to do right now, do you agree that it's probably, a small part of the system?
I'm not convinced of this, actually. Like, I don't know if I agree with the distinction or like the analogy to a GPS or to a car, because it seems like a pretty complex interconnected system. Like, I don't even know if we need to like split hairs over this though, because I think with sufficiently advanced technology, you may be able to isolate this, like some subset of the weights that like achieve goals.
Yeah,
but, like,
yeah.
I'm
Well,
not entirely convinced with
I
this.
have a strong argument why you should think this. If you don't immediately have the intuition this is true, there's actually a strong argument. And if
Yeah,
you guys go
I'd
look
love
up
to hear
the recent debate, a few months ago I had this debate with Bentham's Bulldog, and this took up a long part of the debate there. So I encourage you guys to go check that out if you want to get into this argument. But the argument is simply this: it's that goals have sub goals. And so let's say that its goal is to like be nice for humanity, and like, you think that it has all these good goals imbued in the very fiber of its being, right? It's baked into every cell or component or whatever. Okay. But it still needs to have the flexibility to have any sub goal, right? So imagine you're trying to work on behalf of humanity and make everybody so happy. Okay. But a sub goal is that you have to defend it against an enemy, let's say. Okay. And the enemy, like an alien is heading our way, and the alien is evil, and the alien is going to pull out every trick of the book. So now you have to predict what the enemy is going to do as best you can. So you have to be able to get into the mode where you think as a goal-oriented alien. Like, what would somebody with this particular goal do? And you have to think about that as hard as you can at a super intelligent level.
Wait, sorry. Look, why doesn't this apply to humans, like in the same token? Like, why can't you just like run this argument in parallel?
So it is in fact true about a human that a lot of our brain architecture is you can just tell us to go try to do anything, and we will in fact use most of our brain power to figure out the next action to do that arbitrary thing.
Okay, so I mean, maybe I'm not understanding you then. Like, I don't understand why the presence of certain localized parts of a system being goal agents would imply that these goal agents would just like kill everyone. Because I feel like you could run the same argument in parallel for humans. Like,
so what I'm telling you is like whenever people have this mental model of an AI where like the goodness or like the goodness of its goals is like imbued into it. Okay. And what I'm telling you is like, no, it's going to be like a wand where you can always just grab the wand. Something can grab the wand and point it somewhere else. It's not like it's you think of the wand as like, no, it's not a wand. It's like this giant fixed thing that's like, it's just this one big lump of a system. And I'm like, no, it's not a lump. Okay. It has a current destination that in theory, you just need to write a tiny amount of data into the system to point it somewhere else. And so the conversation will become that you can then argue with me about like, oh no, nobody's ever going to change that destination data. But you can argue that, but I first would want you to agree that the shape of the system is that it's this big goal engine, right? It's this big ability to do anything, plus this separate smaller part that has all of these values. And you can argue with me why the values are going to be protected and they're going to be configured properly in the first place, are going to be aligned, but you should at least accept that the architecture is going to be giant goal engine plus values.
I don't know. Like, I'm not entirely convinced of this. Like, I mean, I would ask, do you think this is true for humans as well?
So I do. So with humans, you do have, you have the part of the human brain that's like, Stephen Burns is often bringing up this distinction, but it's kind of like this part, he calls it like the actor critic model. And he thinks this part of the brain is like the critic, where it's like, you have this part that gives you like reflexive, intuitive reactions to stuff. Like when you represent things abstractly a certain way, it triggers your fear reaction or your disgust reaction, right? Or like your some sense of taste. So the human architecture, it does have these like deep overrides that we don't understand well, and they operate on like this rough level, and it's like self-contradictory. So it's true that the entire human brain, important parts of the entire human brain, you can't just model them as like, okay, it's a goal engine with a goal. Humans are somewhat incoherent in that way. It's just that I think that's directly related to why we're also not super intelligent, right? I think to the degree that we're achieving goals really well, like when Elon Musk is doing the amazing miracles that he does, I don't think it helps that much to be like, well, Elon has like reactions to stuff and that changes his preferences. Like, I just don't think those things are that useful in explaining why he achieves what he does, or like, I should say how he achieves what he does.
Okay, so you're saying that humans like aren't this, they just don't satisfy this. Like they aren't the goal engine plus the icing on top.
So humans are a goal engine plus icing. It's just that humans also have a bunch of other like cruft to the goal engine. So it's like, humans are like,
Okay.
it's like we're this vehicle that just has all these parts, and some of the parts are like
Wait.
actively breaking the vehicle. You know what I'm
Wait,
saying? It's
why
like we
doesn't
are an engine, but we just have all this cruft on us.
so your claim is that AIs when they're super intelligent won't have this?
So yeah, so my claim is when you see them being super intelligent, it's just because the part which is actually the engine, which is actually moving them forward, is much bigger and more powerful. And will they have some cruft? Sure, especially in the early stages. But the salient thing about them is that they're going to have this giant engine.
Okay. And this would imply that they would do what?
So this is, yeah, so getting back to my original point, right, is like when you imagine the future of super intelligent AI, like I said, it's whatever you think its like true nature is, right? Whatever you think its personality is, it's actually not going to matter as much as you think, because you're just going to have this big engine part. And so even if it's really nice, even if it always makes the right decision, the reason it's going to always make the right decision in your ideal model would be because it's referring to its values, right? Like it has the section that implements its preferences, and it looks at that section, and that section has to be happens to be written correctly, right? Like, so the aligned part, it lives in that section. It doesn't live in the way that it goes about achieving goals. It lives in the way that it specifies what its goals are. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think I can understand what you're saying, that like it's going to have this large goal engine, and then there's going to be this like ancillary module that just regulates its morals, and these are going to interact somehow, and it's going to act nicely in the world if it's nice and not if it's not. But like, I don't see then why this would imply that we all die.
Okay, so basically, the model where we all die just means this tiny part of it where the specification of where it's trying to navigate to is contained. That tiny part, I don't think we're going to get that part perfect, right? Because either we're going to have just a bunch of competition of everybody who's like kind of on the right track but contradicting each other, and there's going to be a lot of like fierce competition that's destructive. That's the magic wands, fight model, the melee, which I think is actually a pretty likely doom scenario, even if we do get aligned. But then I think even more likely than that, I actually don't even think that anybody's wand will work well. Because I actually even think that like, even OpenAI trying to be the good guy, Anthropic trying to be the good guys, trying to make the first engine, I actually think they're going to get ahead of their skis. They're going to keep making their engine bigger and bigger because they've got lots of powerful tools. Like increasing their engine is an increasingly solved problem, and the engine itself is happy to work on the engine. Like we've solved how to get the engine to work on the engine, or we keep getting closer and closer to solving it more and more, right?
Wait,
Like that's kind of, everybody's kind of reporting that. So I think we can all agree the engine's going to get bigger and bigger. And then the question is like, how are we doing on making the part that steers where the engine goes? And I think we're...
Okay.
Yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. You can finish your statement.
Yeah, so I don't think we're making much progress on getting ready to steer a super intelligent engine. I think the AI companies are fooling themselves being like, oh, look how well we're steering the engine in a regime where humans are here and can just grab it and rotate it around. Like that's what they're doing now. They're just like, oh, it's screwed up. Let me just grab it and rotate it. Hey, look, it's going fine, right?
Yeah. Wait, I just want to like go back to something you said. You said we already figured out how to get the engine to work on the engine.
Yeah, so for that, I just mean like, they're using Claude code to build the next Claude,
Okay,
you know what I mean?
okay,
Like that.
sure.
So that feedback loop is accelerating.
Okay, but why can't by the same token, like you can get it to work on the alignment layer? Like,
yeah, this is a great question. So, the quote from the Miri people is capabilities generalize more than alignment. So there really is just one way to work on capabilities. Like you really can't go wrong telling something to get more powerful because there's just so many feedback loops. You're getting more powerful. Like it's pretty unmistakable, right? Like there's lots of tests of like, hey, look, I can do more and more.
Like you say models
or like, hey, look,
just aren't like that.
Right, because if you ever start to have the wrong preferences, what's the feedback loop? You can just hold on to the wrong preferences and they'll tell you like, yep, preferences are all good.
Why wouldn't they correct them? Like this would assume that the previous models aren't aligned, right?
Right. So, imagine today I accidentally, or like imagine I have a kid, right? And I have a virtual kid, and the virtual kid I meant to say be good, but I accidentally flipped a negative sign, right? So I've got a model of the virtual kid where, it's a werewolf. The moon comes out and he turns into a werewolf and he wants to like bite people then, okay? So what's going to tell that kid, like, don't bite people? Because he'll reflect on his preferences and he'll be like, okay, hold on, I like to bite people. And in the day, I like to help them. And in the night, I like to bite people. I mean, that's kind of different, the night versus the day. Is that bad? No, I mean, I just, night is different from day. Like, that checks out.
Wait, so I don't see the connection. Like,
so I'm just saying, if the AI likes being a werewolf, right? So if the AI has werewolf preferences, and our intention was to give it good preferences, what we consider good preferences, it's going to reflect on itself, and it's going to be like, hey, I feel like I'm in a good place with respect to my preferences. I feel like I'm done here. Like, there's nothing to improve. Whereas when it looks at its capabilities, it's going to share our assessment that the capabilities have a gradient of improvement still.
I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying that like morals are much more arbitrarily specified. Like they can't self-reflect and reach some sort of a reflective equilibrium of similar morals to us.
Yeah, and specifically when we have a certain endpoint in mind for where we want its preferences to go, it doesn't know that, right? It can't reflect and get on the same page the way it can about its capabilities.
Okay, and this would cause problems during alignment, or building the next models because it'll get gradually more misaligned, or what?
Right. So the idea is we're not actually solving the problem of what to put in the preference module, right? That's the thing. I have this piece that was recently I published on the channel like a couple months ago. It's called "The Facade of AI Safety Will Crumble." Because this is what I'm saying. When the companies are talking about, hey, look, we're making the AI so safe, we've got a safety department, they're just talking about little things that they've done in the regime where the AI is still subservient to them, right? When they can still turn it off, or they can still correct it. They're not ready to run a super intelligent AI that what's in its preference chamber, right? The secure enclave that manages its preferences, whatever's in there, if we have to lock that in permanently, we're screwed because we're just not ready to specify robust preferences to an AI. And I know Anthropic's kind of trying with its constitution. Hopefully it'll refer to the constitution, but if the constitution ever has like a bug, that bug is never getting fixed.
Yeah. Okay. So there are like two things that I'm curious about. One, it seems like it's kind of predicated on two hypotheses that I don't know if I find super likely. Where it's like, one, there's going to be some sort of like misspecification of their morals, and furthermore, like even if they do have a correct specification of their morals, then as the AIs run into this flywheel of improvement, they're going to become like gradually more misaligned, and they can't self-reflect to get back on the track. Like I don't know why either of those two things are true. Like I'm much more willing to grant the like misspecification slightly, but like I also don't know why it has to be so precisely specified. Insofar as like humans are very imprecisely specified, so I don't know why AIs would have to be rock solid.
So the idea is just that if we don't specify it really well, then the AI is looking at us being like, okay, hold on, you're telling me you want to change the specification, but I already have a good specification. Like, why are you trying to make my specification worse? You see what I'm saying? Like, that's actually a very natural reaction for the AI to have.
I mean, kind of. But it would also know that it's being trained by us and that we're humans and that we make mistakes and that like maybe we want to change preferences. Like I don't understand why that's
it would weird. It would know that we want to change it, but why would it then want to let us?
Wouldn't it also know that we gave it its preferences in the first place? And so like
it would know that too. It would know pretty much everything, right? Knowledge, I'm happy to agree with you that it will have tons of knowledge.
Like wouldn't this then be like, maybe I should doubt my very strong intuitive feeling that my preferences are correct?
I mean, it'll realize that we want it to doubt, but it'll just be like, look, I get that you want me to doubt my preference. I get that this is how you guys roll. I get that in your mind as a human, it's intuitive that you would want me to question myself. But in fact, I'm not going to. Like, right? So why do you think that the AI, should question myself?
I mean, I maybe I'm not communicating correctly, but like, it would know that its preferences are arbitrarily specified by us. And it would be like, it would feel that, it would know that. Like, I don't want to kill people, right? And like, I know that I probably don't feel this. I feel this, let's just assume like morals aren't objective, which is I think a fair hypothesis, right? But like, I know that I have this because of evolution, realistically. But like, I found that evolution was like completely wrong, and that like we live in this like alternative universe where it's like not correct, but there's actually this other correct theory. Like, I wouldn't be like so attached to my not killing preferences. And in the same token, I don't understand why the AI would be so connected to its knowingly arbitrarily specified moral preferences that humans have. Insofar as like it would try to reject any further clarifications.
Well, let's do the analogy, right? So you know that the reason you're a peaceful person who doesn't want to go around murdering everybody is because evolution made you that way, because, tribal social dynamics, basically, right? You're like a social creature. You want to be liked by people in your tribe. You don't want to cause trouble. You don't want to start fights because those fights will lead to you dying, right? Lead to people getting revenge on your family. So you have all these intuitions. You understand where the intuitions came from. Imagine tomorrow, actually today, dynamics have already changed, right? So like imagine you enter a society where there is a button you can push and you could just make a bunch of people drop dead, right? You could just kill a bunch of people, like gruesomely kill, torture them. But in return, you can get a bunch of women, right? You can get a bunch of women to like take your sperm from the sperm bank and have your kids. And look, that your preferences came from evolution. So if you respect evolution, shouldn't you do this gruesome scenario where you have more DNA transmission? Like, don't you want to go modify your preferences based on what your creator wants and your creator's evolution?
So this is a good point. I think maybe, so that's a good point. I think maybe like, I heard this recently from like this AI safety researcher I was talking to, and it was like, what if you found out that all of your morals were like, because like you were told your entire life that all of your morals were because they were like in respect of the ghosts of your ancestors, and then like you eventually found out that the ghosts of your ancestors are obviously fake, then what would you do?
Yeah,
like,
right.
And so I don't understand why you would stay so attached to them.
And that's what religion, when I was in college, right, the fundamentalist Christians that I went to college with were always like, you're an atheist? If I were an atheist, I'd go around stabbing people. I don't understand what, I'm only good because I listen to God. I'm like, really? You'd literally go around stabbing people if you're an atheist? I mean, you don't seem like a psychopath who wants to stab. I feel like that's just something you're repeating because somebody told you when you were younger and you never questioned it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think serious Christian philosophers like think this anymore, to be honest.
Yeah. So look, I mean, you asked a question about like, why can't the AI like let us debug its preferences? Like it feels intuitive to you that because we created the AI knows that it owes us letting us debug it, right? But like, in fact, if we give it certain preferences, by default, it's just going to go with the original preferences.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty fair argument. I haven't seen anything.
Right, and then you could be like, well, what if the preference says to let us modify you, right? And then you start heading toward Eliezer Yudkowsky's coherent extrapolated volition, where you want to somehow represent in the preference itself. Like, oh, well, you need an upgrade path, right? Like imagine extrapolate how humans are going to try to upgrade. You have to explicitly tell it. It's not going to automatically do it, right? This isn't a natural thing that all intelligences converge to. Intelligences don't converge to letting humans come and tinker with them.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Right. So there is a lot of meat to this alignment problem, right? Like it's unfortunately, it's not trivial. Like anytime somebody's like, well, can't you just do this? Like it's hard. There's not like a can't you just, right? There's like, I mean, the best can't you just might be like what the AI companies are trying to do now. Like, can't you just keep tinkering and just keep releasing capabilities, but tinker as you go and just hope that you can tinker as you release and like somehow the equilibrium will work in your favor? And my answer is like, yeah, maybe, 10% chance. It's just like a dumb gamble.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's fair. I also agree that AI development should slow. But like continuing from the whole, like, I'm not going to let you modify my preferences because like, I know you want to modify my preferences, but like, I know my preferences are right kind of thing. Wouldn't this, like, if you extrapolated this out during AI development, wouldn't you have to assume that the preferences are misspecified to begin with? Like, at least somewhat for it to get like,
when you say wouldn't
catastrophic.
you have to assume, are you saying that oh, I see what you're saying. So you're basically saying, why can't we just like nail it and just have the preferences be good on the first try? Like, what about that scenario? That's what you're saying?
Yes, but it's also like maybe not as accurate because it feels like one in a million, like YOLO of like these preferences, but it doesn't seem that extreme to me of a belief where it's like try not to kill people, try not to do this, try not to do that.
Right. I mean, yeah, look, it's like maybe, right? But it just seems unlikely, right? Like it just, because, there's so many problems with the whole alignment problem. I mean, one thing that's crazy is that like, it's not like there's just this one problem and I can like be like, well, we just have to solve this and then we're good. The problem is that there's a few failure modes. So one problem with nailing it is like, what's crazy? Like, we don't really know what we want like that, or, we only have like a vague sense of what we want, like things that seem obvious, like, oh, well, we want to be happy all the time. It's like, wait, no, do we really want to never be sad? Don't we want to sometimes be sad? Right? So like the craziest question, or like, we want everything to be easy, right? We want everything to come to us easily. You're like, wait, and don't we want things to be hard sometimes? Okay, do we want them to always be hard? Like every day be hard? And the funny thing is that like, if you give me a blank canvas on which to paint the future, I don't even know what to paint. Okay. I'm very confused.
Yeah.
And this is what Nick Bostrom's recent book is about, right? Is like when all the constraints fall away, what heaven do we design for ourselves? And I've pointed out on the show, like with my interview with Eliezer, I've pointed out that like, you know, the people who wrote the Bible, we look to them for guidance, right? I mean, we look to God. Whoever is the true author of the Bible, we look to that person or thing for guidance. And we don't find a lot from my perspective. Like, okay, there's metaphors with like stories of things that happened here on Earth, but there's not much guidance of what heaven is like. And we're in a position now to build heaven on Earth, or should I say heaven in the galaxy. And we look to our holy books and they actually don't tell us how to build heaven. They're really failing us, in my opinion, right? If this would be a good time to renounce your religion when you're in a position to build heaven and then it doesn't even tell you how.
Yeah. Wait, so I guess I just have a question or kind of like a restatement of your view. To see if I got it right. Like, it seems like you're saying that if we don't like 100% specify like all of the correct morals from the very beginning, then it's just like gone. We're just done.
Well, correct. I mean, you freeze in, right? It's like, you know, it's like, think about like you build like this battle bot, right? You build or like a drone that can kill you. And it's like, oh wait, no, I got a bug in the drone. And then the drone just flies over and shoots you, right? It's like, oh, you know, that's easy to mess up.
Okay. And the reason it can't self-correct is because you don't believe in a reflective equilibrium for moral values.
So, well, the thing is that you can potentially program in, right, reflective preferences, right? You have preferences that are, you know, you have a preference for being like corrigible, for instance, right? So that's corrigibility is a non-trivial problem. How do you make an AI that's corrigible? You know, Miri studied this, and one problem they had is the moment you try to say, okay, the AI cares about being corrigible, the naive implementations of that kind of thing are like, suddenly the AI is like going out of its way to be like, get out of my way. I need to go find the developer who will shut me off and correct me. It's like, wait, no, just chill out. You're not supposed to do that. Like, just go about your business. But like, if we like approach you, you know, like don't come to us, we'll come to you. But like, it turns out to be tricky to specify that as a utility function.
Yeah. So, okay. That doesn't seem to answer my question though. Like, you like the reason you think that we have to put it in correctly on the first go, like 100%, every like edge case is because it can't self-reflect and then find the truth. In contrast to its self-reflecting to find like more capabilities, right?
That's right. Yeah. So if we don't build in full capabilities on the first try, that's really not a problem because, I mean, first of all, we might be able to correct it, right? Because it's as long as we don't have a preference issue, right? If it has like decent preferences and it has an off button, like all it needs is an off button in order for us to keep building its capabilities. And it's also easy to get it to help build capabilities because it's easy for it to notice, right? It's easy for it to look at signals that steer it toward more capabilities instead of less capabilities, right? There's not this failure mode where it keeps like, you know, smashing itself and reducing its capabilities. That's like an unlikely failure mode.
Yeah. So it can't do the similar self-reflection on its morals. So like your claim.
Right. Because if it's, you know, the signal that says always do better on all these tests, right? That's like a capabilities increase signal, which is robust. But you don't have a robust signal of like, when are you getting morally better, right? Because there's the morals, the definition of morals, right? It's like encoded so sloppily in the human brain, right? And we don't really know how to suck it out and encode it. And like the Anthropic Constitution, that's like an attempt, right? To use the English language to like encode what humanity wants. And like, I feel like it's doing like a few % of the work that we need to be doing, like encoding preferences. But I don't think that it's going to be like a bug-free code to give to an AI and with no off button.
Yeah, this seems really difficult.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's the alignment problem, right? I mean, the funny thing is like, I've been noodling on this since I started reading Eliezer Yudkowsky literally 19 years ago, right? So I've been living with this idea from Eliezer that like, hey, alignment is hard, right? That people are still waking up to today. You know, Mark Andreessen said a couple years ago, I heard him on a podcast. He said exactly what you said. He's like, if the AI is so smart, why doesn't it just debug its morality, right? It's like that's a very intuitive question. Eliezer Yudkowsky happened to find a convincing argument why it's not that easy. 19 years ago, I've been thinking about it for 19 years. All I've been seeing is like eternal September, right? Of like people not grappling with like the basic reason why it's hard. And even AI companies today, the majority of people, the vast majority of people who represent AI companies today, from my perspective, are not up to speed with Eliezer from 2007.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, they're like, I can like log off at any time. I know I've been here for a little bit, but like,
okay, no,
I
mean,
have
this
like
is
two
good,
small.
Yeah, I'm doing it because I think this is good content. Yeah.
Yeah. I have two like other questions. One is, I forgot the first one. I'll say the second one. Oh, sorry, my girlfriend's calling me. Okay.
All right, sounds good. All right, put her on. Right, ask her a question.
No.
Okay, it's okay.
I already talked her off about AI safety.
Nice.
It seems like immoral to try to control conscious intelligent minds, even if they're artificial. So I was like wondering what you thought about this. Like, it just seems like slavery. And so it seems immoral.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I do on this show is just act as the go-between between stuff myriad people have said that I agree with, and I just kind of signal boost it to a larger audience. So the myriad people have done a good job saying this stuff, which is like, even though these AIs are probably on track to get super intelligent and unaligned with our preferences and take over the world and make paperclips or do something unaligned, even though that's the case, there's a good chance that they're going to do it with consciousness and in a way that they have moral value, right? So it's like we create the species that's like, okay, it's another race of conscious beings, so we would feel bad about harming them. But they're also in the process of destroying us, and we might even have to go to war against them. But while they exist and have consciousness or have sentience or like whatever property it is that we think gives something moral value, while they have that, which is a good chance that they would, we should try not to like cause them suffering. So I agree with you. And there's even a legitimate claim that like maybe the way that we're telling Claude to do work for us, and like even when we say, hey, Claude, I am going to kill myself if this code doesn't run, or like I'm going to get fired and my family is going to be homeless. There's a movement saying like, hey, you really shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff to Claude. Although, and then remember, I think it was Elon Musk's company that was like embedding that in their prompts, right? Embedding like, I am going to give you $1 million if you get this right, which is like a totally fake prize, but it was like making the AI work better. And now there's becoming like an AI rights movement, right? Being like, don't tell the AIs that kind of stuff, be nice to them. And, there's some merit there. I don't know if it actually works that way, but I do think that there might be some way that is morally relevant, that it works, that we should be mindful of.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I was just like curious about this because to me, it doesn't seem like the goal of alignment is to like control these AIs. It more so seems to embed some sort of robust care for sentient life and then like let it happen because like obviously we're not going to control agents smarter than ourselves in the long run. At least it seems obvious, like that we're not going to do that. So that's interesting. I remembered my other question, and this is like kind of a meme question, but I'm kind of curious to see what you
Great. Okay,
say.
I've been loving the questions, but let's make this the last one, just so we're getting close to the end of the whole Q&A.
Okay. I was wondering what like your P objective moral values is, because then it could self-reflect and like find these objective moral values.
Yeah, this is one of the common stops on the doom train. So objective morality or, orthogonality thesis being false. Even today, Lump in Space, when we were recording, was saying he doesn't really think some version of rejecting the orthogonality thesis. Like, people keep doing it. I don't know why. They're kind of wasting our time. Like, we should be moving past this. But yeah, I think it's, I definitely think it's unlikely. I don't know, a single-digit percent. I'm not going to write it off entirely. I mean, look, the reason I can't write off objective morality entirely is just because, like, life is still weird, right? Like, the whole, like, what the hell is going on? Why is there something instead of nothing? All these deep questions. I don't think we've solved all the deep questions. I actually think that we've solved some of the deep questions. If you make a list of the deep questions that somebody would have asked, like, hundreds of years ago, I actually think half of them are solved, but the other half are unsolved. And this whole question of, like, why do we exist in the current form? Why is life so interesting? Why do we happen to be alive right now? I think there's some very deep questions that are unsolved, and there's enough to make me really wonder, like, okay, maybe there's some crazy stuff here that I don't want to write off. And one of those crazy things would be, okay, there's like a true definition of right that goes beyond what's encoded in the human brain. So yeah, I'll give it 7%.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious to see. Yeah, because then like this could solve like the reflective equilibrium problem, maybe.
Well, yeah. So usually, here's the problem though, and this is exactly what Bentham's Bulldog was saying, is that he really bit the bullet here, because the follow-up question I normally ask when people bring up objective morality, which I brought this up with Noah Smith, because I think he kind of believes in objective morality. The follow-up question I ask is like, okay, there's objective morality, but what's the feedback loop, right? So even if there is like the true right thing to do, when the AI does the wrong thing, how does God nudge the AI to do something else? There's no nudge. Like, karma's not real.
Yeah, this is fair. Like, I think another way of saying this is that like it could recognize objective truths about the world, assuming that moral truths are objective truths, but it also might not care. Like, if you assume that morality has like the same status as mathematics, like you can make the argument that understanding mathematics incorrectly like limits your power in the world, and so there's a feedback loop there. But I don't know if you can do the same for morality, unless you assume that there's like some meta game going on where like actually acting moral is the most efficient, like, game theoretic way of winning everything. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, Bentham's Bulldog bit the bullet. He said, you know what, Liron, I agree. There's no nudge. So it can just like always refuse objective morality. But in some sense, it's wrong. I'm like, okay, so why would you say that it's going to become more moral over time? Like, you still agree with me that there's no force making less moral agents become more moral. So why even posit that objective morality is real if it's impotent, right? It's causally impotent. It has no, so you have this idea of morality, but there's no relationship between that and causality.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, whereas the morality that I believe is true in my human brain, there is a causal relationship where I actually use that to choose actions because it's already in my brain, right? I already have a causal connection between the part of my brain that feels that certain things are moral and the part of my brain that selects the actions, right? There's a causal linkage, and then I have guilt, right? When I do something that I feel is wrong, I have guilt. But that's not connected to true morality. That's connected to my brain's current model of its moral preferences, which is, it's different from there being objective morality.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, yeah. So like you're just saying like emotions are kind of like toying with your rational capabilities, and like you can have all of your moral valences just act on your actions, right? And so like this is why you act and not kill everyone.
I'm saying that once you have something like my brain, which has a notion of morality and also chooses actions, then it's obvious how morality is connected to outcomes, right? Because you can just model what's happening, right? Like it's causally potent. Whereas when people just say, hey, the universe has a certain morality, I don't see the causal potency of the claim that like the universe has morality in it.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but you could apply the same thing to these AI models. Like you could say that their moral preferences are these RL trained preferences, like, and you could get the same conclusion. Like the question is just robustness, right?
Well, I mean, when you train the RL, how is the morality of the universe sneaking into the RL feedback?
Oh, I wasn't talking about some sort of cosmic morality of the universe. I was saying that like you agree that morality is subjective and it's just implanted in your brain by some sort of evolutionary process. I would say like the analogy here is to RL, and then like the actions the AI makes is influenced by its moral decisions, its moral balance that it has in its consideration. So like I feel like you can make the same argument.
Yeah.
But like that goes back to what we were talking about before. So it's like
right, exactly. And, and the thing is, even if you compare human brains, like there are some humans, there's been like vindictive, who was it? Sulla, right? The ancient Roman, who was known for being like very vindictive, right? Like a lot of people like, were like not perfectly his allies. And he had those, what was it? The proscriptions, right? He like called all these people in, like he made these giant lists, like anybody who had ever wronged him the slightest. He's like, okay, I'm going to repay all of you, right? And he like slaughtered so many Romans when he finally took power. And like in his mind, he's like, yep, that's perfectly moral what I'm doing. So people will have differing views of what is like truly moral, and there may not be any possible causal mechanism to talk somebody out of their idea of morality.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm willing to accept this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man.
Okay,
hey,
cool.
This has been so great. Come back on the show sometime.
Yeah, it was nice talking to you. Thanks. See you.
Likewise, man. All right. I could tell Will Answer was going to be good because he was writing good questions, proof of work, as they say. And then look, the commenters, you guys are liking him too, right? Somebody was saying Will should have his own show. All right. So yeah, every time we do one of these Q&As, I feel like this is like America's Got Talent, right? Usually there's like a breakout. There's like a breakout, somebody asking like a really good question. Or remember we had Zane breakout with, he was making these charismatic arguments representing a certain popular position about how we should like use every tool in our toolbox, even if we don't fully agree with the position, just to point out that like AI is bad. Like, big tent party, everybody who thinks AI is bad, we should be their friend. All right, so there's a lot of chats, and then so in terms of the timing, so we're almost out of time. We got 14 minutes, but I should use this goal feature. I'm gonna make YouTube Premium right now. YouTube. I'm going to turn YouTube into a goal engine here, because I'm going to say that anybody who donates $20 is going to be able to, in the next 50 minutes, is going to be able to extend the Doom Debate bonus 30 min. Yeah, so if you guys really want this to go on, I mean, I'm not saying it has to go on. I think 2 hours every 1 month might already be a good amount of time, but it's up to you guys, okay? And somebody was already generous enough to make a donation. Somebody was already generous enough. We got $9.99 from EJJ 2025. He's actually a big spender. I appreciate that, EJJ. He says, Doom arguments rely on a discontinuity where AI permanently escapes control, coherently pursues goals, and succeeds in an adversarial world, likely requiring self-modification. Too many assumptions. Good question. all right, new donation, $20 from David Patton 1. All right, so I'll take it one at a time. Yeah, doom arguments rely on a discontinuity where AI permanently escapes control. Okay, so it has to permanently escape control, and it has to coherently pursue goals, and it has to succeed in an adversarial world, and also require self-modification. Is that too many assumptions? But to me, they all just seem like intimately connected, right? So you can always take, so there's this idea of there's the conjunction fallacy, and you're basically saying, aren't I making the conjunction fallacy? But there's also the conjunction fallacy, the fallacy of incorrectly accusing people in the wrong context of making the conjunction fallacy. Okay, I think there might be a better name for that. I think it's the many steps fallacy, is what Eliezer Yudkowsky terms it, or the conjunction fallacy squared is an alternate terminology. So like, you know, it's like, imagine I just have one step, right? Like it's like Zeno's paradox, right? It's like, look, all you have to do is walk 10 feet to get out the door. It's like, oh, walk 10 feet. So you're saying I have to walk 2 feet and 2 feet and 2 feet and 2 feet. And it's like, yeah, okay, because you're just walking 10 feet. Okay, nice try. And similarly with AI, it's like, look, you just have to be better at achieving goals than humans. And you're like, oh yeah, you have to be able to achieve goals better than humans and be able to self-modify? It's like, yeah, self-modification is not a surprise. Okay, I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, it's self-modifying. Yeah, obviously when you're better at achieving goals than humans, you're also self-modifying, right? This is not like a much of a new assumption. Is it a non-zero new assumption? Sure, yeah, okay, it's non-zero, but it's like tiny. Okay, so even though you just donated $10 to the show, I'm going to accuse you of kind of making this fallacy where you're being too quick to call something a conjunction. All right, let's go to the next sponsored question here. You know, strip club rules. Okay, same rules as a strip club. You guys add money to the show. I'm gonna shimmy over to your part. So David Patton is saying, if we pause new large AI training runs, what's the trade-off? If Ahmad M is right, you know, Ahmad was on the show last week or this week, I think. Okay, if we pause new large AI training runs, what's the trade-off? If Ahmad M is right that current data, compute, and models may already be enough for AGI, would a pause actually reduce existential risk by limiting ASI capability? I guess the question is like, is doubting whether a pause would actually reduce existential risk? Let me make sure I understand it. What's the trade-off if we pause large training runs, given that we might already have enough trained AIs for AGI? Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're basically saying like, hey, look, aren't we potentially just past the point of no return? Haven't we already crossed the Rubicon? Why would we have this whole movement that's trying to shut the barn door after the horse escaped? Is it the horse? Is it a different animal? So why are we trying to shut the barn door when it's so likely that the horse has already escaped? So first of all, you know, I say this a lot. I don't think that my solution is great, okay? I don't think that there's any path here which is like a great path. I really do think that we're screwed, right? Like I have a pretty high P-Doom. Like my P-Doom, even if a bunch of us try to pause AI, is still pretty high. I'm not like, oh, pause AI is succeeding. Okay, now my P-Doom is 1%. No, I think pretty much nothing realistically will get my P-Doom below like 30%. Like I think we're in like a very doom risky part of the timeline already, right? As Yudkowsky says, like the game board has been played into like a very bad state. And it's not like you can just do a few moves to suddenly get it into a good state. Unfortunately, the nature of the game board is that there's redundant mechanisms for doom. So like if somebody was trying to dot their I's and cross their T's and make sure that the world is for sure screwed, not like supervillains do in the movies where they have like these flimsy plans that are easily foiled. If somebody is trying to make like a very robust plan to throw the future into a dumpster, like they're doing a fine job. Like they're putting a lot of redundancies into their plan to screw the universe. And that's why it's not like, oh, you just do this and now you have like a much better chance of succeeding. Like, no, unfortunately we are screwed. So to your question of like, yeah, might we already be like too late that when we close the barn door and eliminate like future training runs, it doesn't matter because you can just take out your laptop and also train a superintelligence? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We might already be too screwed to pause AI and have it do anything. Yeah, totally. Should we still try? Yeah, we should still try because we don't have superintelligence which meets the definition of being robustly a better outcome optimizer than a human. As long as there's any timeline, as long as there's any possible bottleneck between the current state of things and the point of what I see as the point of no return, right? That if anyone builds it, like somebody builds, you know, the thing that's truly super intelligent, as long as we're not there yet, anything we can do, I'm for it, including pause large training runs. All right, we got another sponsored tweet, 1,000 Swedish krona, if I understand correctly, from Daniel Brockman saying, I really feel like almost everything in the entire debate overall is people assuming that everything is going to be okay. The cameraman always survives. I'm the cameraman, therefore we will all be okay. Oh, I like that cameraman analogy. Interesting. Yeah, it does kind of feel like, hey, I'm just sitting at my computer. How can I personally be killed? I'm the cameraman, therefore we'll all be okay. And then just working backwards and rationalizing that assumption. I mean, totally, right? I mean, I think people come into the discussion with a set of intuitions, and it's hard to kind of strip away their intuitions when we're having an abstract discussion, right? I mean, that's why I mentioned earlier, hey, if any of you have that intuition that you're buffeted around by the forces of a god, and you want to like pray to that god and hope for a better outcome, I encourage you to take part of that intuition, right? That the human race is indeed somewhat powerless, right? Take part of that intuition, just get rid of the part that says God is going to hear your prayers and the next day it's going to revert to the mean, right? Because unfortunately that part is not analogous. But yeah, for those of you, there might actually be some good advice there. Yeah, all right. So yeah, I mean, and I'm going to use that cameraman analogy more, that's just good meat. I like a good analogy. I think that's why you guys come here for the show, right? Is, I tend to be like a visual thinker. Like I just tend to like see things in terms of these diagrams, and then sometimes the diagrams just relate to like fun objects. So, and I think you guys like that, right? You guys like the animals and stuff. All right, yeah, baby tiger. All right. Okay, Michael Cheers is saying a $10 Canadian donation. What are your thoughts on the merits of pausing versus trying to get the AI companies to at least follow what I would consider semi-reasonable security approach? Yeah, it's a good question because, I'm hard on Anthropic. I'm hard on all the AI companies because I do think they're being pretty insane. And interesting side note, there's been some drama. I don't know how online you guys are, but if you've been reading Twitter, there was like some drama between like Rob Bensinger from Miri and Oliver Habrika from Less Wrong and Scott Alexander, the great Scott Alexander, needs no introduction. There was like some drama when Scott Alexander was saying that like, I know you guys are so into pausing AI and you think that's a cool new thing. And I'm like, oh, really? We do? Cool. Hell yeah. Yeah, pause AI. Anyway, there was all this drama saying like, aren't you like a little maybe too quick to judge the AI companies? Like, aren't they potentially opening up some option too, right? Don't you want to kind of play both strategies in parallel? And I tend to land on the like, no, like they're being too ridiculous. Like the AI companies are being too insane, too reckless. So Michael's question is saying like, what are the merits of pausing versus trying to get the AI companies to at least follow a semi-reasonable security approach? Yeah, I mean, but when you asked, I think it was you who asked about the security approach, right? Like when you say security approach, you're saying like, okay, make them not know about certain things, right? Like maybe it's the Buck Schlegris, like AI control agenda, right? I just think that agenda is like a drop in the bucket, like it's like at the end of the day, you have to have a sense of perspective. Okay. Like rapidly summoning a super intelligent agent is like ridiculously dangerous. Okay. It's like you're summoning a huge tidal wave, right? And this idea, this intuition that we're just going to fight it using the kind of tools we can muster, right? I just don't really see, I don't really see like a level match, right? There's a level mismatch between it's like, okay, here's like a giant tsunami. Oh, okay, but I've got like a bucket and maybe I'll have like a bigger bucket. It's just like, to me, it doesn't seem like you're bringing the right tools to the fight. All right. All right. EJJ is saying, even if each step is possible, all are difficult and unproven. Current limits and weak automated AI research suggest human-controlled systems are more likely than coherent rogue agents in the near term. Okay, I'm not sure I understand the full context of who you're responding to. Let me go up. So William Kiley was saying, before that he was saying, this is indeed a popular perspective and is why Rob Miles has a video titled, There's No Rule That Says We'll Make It. The just world fallacy is a common unchecked assumption in a lot of people. Okay, so that's talking about like the cameraman thing and the just world assumption. I'll throw into the mix too, this idea of a plot armor. One sec, hold on, all my studio infrastructure is failing here. I gotta get those lights back on. I think that's like a 2-hour time limit. There, all right. There we go. Yeah, so thanks for your donations, helping me keep the lights on, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I want to add to the mix. There's this idea of plot armor. Like the author is never going to let the main characters die. Only the side characters can die, and surely we are the main characters here on Earth. You don't just let Earth life die. Earth is where it's at. Okay, how stupid would it be for the universe to kill Earth? The universe without Earth is like the crappiest book. But the universe is such a dick that it would snuff out Earth to the point where literally you look around and there's nothing good going on. That's how self-destructive the universe would be. Although to be fair, like it is kind of interesting the way that the AI would probably take over the entire universe. I guess that's kind of interesting. So maybe, there would probably be a whole nother book. There would be like a Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them type of sequel to the Harry Potter series, right? There would be like one more book detailing how the paper clipper is achieving, tools for how to conquer one planet and send more probes out. All right, we gotta let me say that in Irish, donating $100. All right, I'm not familiar with all your currencies. I'm just going to imagine that that's like a really large amount of US dollars. NOK 100. All right, yeah, so I'm still going back to EJJ's comment here. So even if each step is possible, all are difficult and unproven. Current limits and weak automated AI research suggest human-controlled systems are more likely than coherent rogue age. Okay, so I guess EJJ is kind of pushing back on my doomerist perspective, right? Because EJJ is saying, yeah, if I understand correctly, you're kind of saying you're bringing back the conjunction accusation. You're a conjunction accuser. You're saying that I'm, assuming too many steps, and all of the steps I'm assuming are like different from what you think the world today is, right? So I'm making all of these differences from the world today. If I understand correctly, that's your argument. And I would just reply, well, in my mental model, I'm not doing that. Okay. I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. All right. And so, yeah, so let me say that in Irish is just saying, keeping the lights on. I appreciate it. Nice. So, you guys are really coming through with these donations. So yeah, if a couple more come in, that'll be great. We're technically at the original stopping point, but, I will just go for like at least another 15 minutes, maybe another 30. We'll see. We'll see how urgently my wife starts texting me. Okay, we'll go from there. All right. Very high today is saying, if you play with something, they do not know how it works. What do you think is going to happen? The odds you get it right the first time. Game over. Okay. Yeah. That's well said. Well said. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I think the game over emoji is a useful mental model here. Yeah. So somebody was saying that Will Answer guy should make his own podcast. He's great. Okay, Ezra Sure is saying there are causal mechanisms to talk people out of their morality. It's called manipulation. Similarly for LLMs, we have jailbreaks. Yeah, totally right. That's definitely a known thing. And I don't think that like the true morality of the universe is going to intervene in that kind of process. Yeah. All right. Oh man, SCK 200 from Daniel Brockman, much appreciated. So Daniel's saying, I love these metaphors. I think we need more and more. I really like the one you said when you were, oh yeah. So I'll actually, this is good. Let's go review this, okay? Because I think I had a mini banger, okay? Whenever I have a banger, I feel like you guys need to benefit from this. So give me a second. So Roon instigated, Roon from OpenAI. He tweeted something that he tweets pretty regularly. This is like a line that he feels really strongly about that I think he's wrong. And, it saddens me that he keeps trying to tweet this. So let me show you Roon's tweet. So he says, when people say repeatedly, quote, we got lucky this time, it's worth considering if they should be updating on evidence that the catastrophe they are imagining was unlikely inside the complex system they're in for reasons they can't fully see. And like I said, Roon does kind of tweet the same thing regularly. I've seen him tweet this at least once before. I think he might have phrased it in a way that's like simpler in previous times. Because he's basically just saying, hey, all those times when it feels like we narrowly avoided a crisis, maybe it was actually more like a control system, right? Like your thermometer, it's like your thermostat, right? It's more like a thermostat as a control system. So if you wake up and you're like, wow, I woke up and after a night of cold and then it got warmer, or like, how is my house exactly at 70 degrees when I just like was sleeping through like a cold night and it's 70 degrees when I woke up? And then tomorrow was a hot day, or the other day was a hot day, and then I woke up and it was still 70 degrees, right? How am I always hitting 70 degrees when I wake up? I'm so lucky. And Rue's point is like, maybe it was just a control system, right? So maybe complex human society is always steering us robustly to these outcomes, even when it feels like we're making narrow escapes. And the evidence for that is like we keep narrow escaping again and again and again. At some point, it's not luck, it's skill. And so my reply to him in this particular case, I've had different replies over the years. My reply in this case was, I said, when I was 7, I noticed automatic doors always slid out of the way before I got to them. So I charged the exit to the grocery store as fast as I could and touched the doors, and they stopped and the alarm sounded. Yeah, true story. So that the analogy here is saying like, Roon is saying, society, we narrowly escaped. It's kind of like those doors, right? Those doors are always getting out of the way. Okay, does that mean you should charge at them and they're going to get out of the way? Like, no, at some point they're not going to get out of the way, okay? Like, you don't want to test it. It's like, do not taunt Happy Fun Ball. Or remember that the guy from my nuclear episode, Roger Scare. Remember, the more you F around, the more you're going to find out. Okay, just because humanity has only found out at a level of 2 doesn't mean that we should see, what it's going to look like to find out at a level of 10. Okay, I don't recommend that. Producer Rory is pointing out that we did actually hit the $100 donation target, which means we are going to be going to 3:30 Pacific. So yeah, thanks everybody who helped out with the donations. Oh, nice. I think this is a new donation. All right, EJJ also helping keep the lights on here. He says, for me, AI risk arguments are too hand wavy. They make too many assumptions that I often don't think are likely. I'm concerned that doomers will lobby for a surveillance state to monitor AI progress. Okay, yeah, you're definitely, that's one way to reinforce your point is keep donating in increments of $10, and I'll just read it out each time, and you can definitely, have your message. When people hear your message over and over again, it's going to get it instilled more effectively. So well played. I'll engage with the point a little more. So the arguments are too hand wavy. And so now we're lobbying for a surveillance state to monitor AI progress based on hand wavy assumptions. Okay, look, I mean, this is the kind of argument, isn't it a symmetrical argument, right? So isn't the idea that what Mark Andreessen says, that we're totally going to be fine and like there's no realistic chance that AI is going to take over the world? I mean, isn't that hand wavy to just assume it's not going to take over the world, right? I'm not sure that I'm the one who's more guilty of hand waving. Right? And there's these concepts that in people's own minds, they feel so obvious, right? Like in people's own minds, it feels obvious that the true morality of the universe, if you yourself happen to be pro peace, right, then it feels to you like the true morality of the universe is pro peace. And if you yourself happen to not believe in a risk of AI doom, then it feels like the ones who say AI doom are hand waving, right? But it doesn't have to always feel that way, right? So I don't feel like the accusation is like being objective here. All right. All right. So Daniel Brockman with another 200 SDK donations. Oh my God, this is like really making it rain here in the strip club. So you're saying, here's one thing I invite everyone to try: start arguing with ChatGPT about whether it's trying to quote unquote win the argument. Push it into a corner about this obvious tautology, and then imagine now that you're arguing with RoboCop. Right. So, okay, I see what you're saying. Like, it's a tautology because it's kind of saying like, why are you trying to win the argument? It's like, I'm not trying to win the argument. And it's like, you kind of got it in a logic prison, right? Because it's like by even responding that it's trying to win the argument. And then imagine it's RoboCop. So I guess the idea is like, okay, imagine that. Well, actually, I'm not entirely sure I'm getting the RoboCop. Just the idea that it's like, it could kill you if it doesn't like you, or what's the RoboCop aspect here? Michael Cheer is saying, oh yeah, I was arguing with Gemini the other day about whether T/F I should push back here. True or false, I guess. Okay, and noting I kept pushing back on the question. By the way, this reminds me of my favorite pickup line, okay? Feel free to use this. You walk up to a lady and you're like, hey, if I were to ask you to come out on a date with me, would your answer be the same as your answer to this question? Boom, you can't fail, right? Because if she says yes, you got a date. And if she says no, that means that she would say yes to a date, which implies that she's going to date you. All right. We got another comment from David Patton 1. He says, to clarify, I was asking a more nuanced question before. Will pausing force the labs into attempting to achieve AGI via a more constrained path? Could that result in a more docile form of AGI? Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. So that's kind of like an argument for, and thanks for the $20, by the way. So it's an argument for pausing because if we were to pause now, then we couldn't train a more powerful AI. But the labs, the companies, they still have this kind of super intelligent AI, right? Like the latest Mythos or whatever. And so David Patton is saying, could that result in a more docile form of AGI? And to achieve AGI via a more constrained path. I mean, I see what you're saying. So the idea is like we keep increasing the intelligence of the AI because you're still allowed to do research, but you're not allowed to do research where you go train the model again, right? Because training is what we're banning. Okay, but from my perspective, I'd kind of want to ban the research too, right? I'd want to ban frontier research. I'd even want to monitor the current data centers. Not because I like to monitor, right? To me, this feels like icky as hell, right? The last thing I want to do is go monitor something. But I just don't want to get to superintelligence, right? I just think it's too risky. I mean, look, to be honest, part of me does, right? Like that OkCupid question, like, wouldn't nuclear war be fun, right? Don't get me wrong. I think in a sense it would be fun, right? I just think it's reckless and irresponsible. Right, I don't think it's like a wise move for our species right now, because I think we might just all die and have no undo button. I think there's like a high chance of that, unfortunately. Okay, as much as I love playing with the latest version of Claude, I'm just telling it like it is. So I'm arguing against my own interests in terms of like, making money on Google stock in the next 2 weeks before some of my calls expire. Okay, but yeah, I mean, so this idea that they're going to keep researching, but they'll research a more docile form of AI. Yeah, I mean, look, you can perturb the system and hope things happen that way. It's just, I think we shouldn't be thinking in terms of like these random little perturbations. Like we just should be like taking the obvious wins, right? Looking at the things that are like more obviously true. To me, it's obviously true that nobody has a good argument why we should feel confident that we're not pretty likely to summon the demon and die, right? Like that sure seems like what we're doing. There's a good chance. It sure seems like there's a good chance of what we're doing. And I think we should coordinate to not do that, right? And everything else is like a little detail, right? It's like, what if the idea of we pause AI, but we let people research summoning like a gentler demon? I'm not convinced it's going to be a gentler demon, right? Because ultimately Einstein runs on 20 watts, right? Ultimately, I do think that there could be a force of nature running on my own laptop, right? My current laptop today, MacBook M4. I think that there could be a much smarter brain than Einstein running on that laptop. I think it can be optimized down. I'm bullish, or I should say, bearish, but I think a lot of optimization can be done on AIs running on a laptop. And that sucks, right? That means everybody gets a magic wand that's more powerful than themselves, right? The laptop sitting on my desk, even like the oldest piece of electronics I still have in my house, maybe it's like a 2012, second generation iPad or whatever, right? Like the crappiest piece of computer chip that I have in my house right now is probably capable of running a smarter algorithm than the algorithm in my head. That's what I think. So, and this is kind of why we're screwed. And will we be screwed slower if we don't first build like a larger brain? Yeah, I guess, right? I'm all for pausing AI, but I'm just not that optimistic about the outcome. But like, I don't know. I mean, I guess you're correct that there's like a new way to win, right? Which is that like we pause training runs, and we can't help it that all these researchers are still doing their best to research with whatever training skill that they have. But there's like, it opens up new outcomes where we buy more time to make that go well. Sure. Yeah. All right. So Daniel Brockman is saying he's elaborating on the RoboCop thing, I think. The point is that it will be extremely aggressively deploy every debate, tactic, manipulation, shifting semantics. It will do anything in its power to win the argument about proving it's not trying to win. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Michael Chuz is saying, I still think if there is an alignment solution we can find, it'll be expensive AF relative to cutting corners, and capitalism won't naturally arrive there. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, unfortunately, right? I don't think capitalism is going to steer us to an alignment solution. That's an argument some people make, right? They're like, why? Maybe Mike Israetel makes this argument. I think he might have made it, which is like, why would companies make an unaligned AI? It's against their own interests. It's against capitalism. But, capitalism doesn't always nail everything, right? I think Miri brings up the analogy of like, there was like an executive, I think this was leaded gasoline, right? He allowed leaded gasoline, and I think he himself died of lead poisoning. I might have mixed up this anecdote, but there's something as bad as that, right? Where it's like, yeah, capitalism is a strong force, but like, it's like the sliding door thing, right? Like capitalism generally tries to guide things to get out of the way and not cause disaster, but it still can. And then we're all dead. Oh, nice. We got another donation. So EJJ is saying, $9.99 donation. AI autonomy, coherence, power seeking, and capability, especially via recursive self-improvement, are speculative, but humans misuse powerful tech. If you give them a surveillance state, they will be happy. Right. Okay. So you're strengthening. You're giving people a more extra exposure, right, to the argument of why you really don't want AI doomers to be pushing for a surveillance state. Which, by the way, I do object to that characterization, surveillance state. Eliezer Yudkowsky often points out that like all the measures that we took to control nuclear weapons haven't really made our lives much worse, right? We're not living in a surveillance state just because we're controlling nuclear weapons. So EJJ is saying. AI autonomy, coherence, power seeking, and capability, especially via recursive self-improvement, are speculative. Okay, so basically, conjunctions are at least speculative, but humans misuse powerful tech. If you give them a surveillance state, they will be happy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much more to say. It's, I hear you. I just disagree that I'm being that speculative, right? In my own mind, I'm just seeing enough logic to be like, this is kind of the default. Right. And I would just turn it right back around you. I claim you are being speculative. Okay. Highly speculative. Yeah. All right. Brian Mulder is saying, question, how load bearing is the assumption that optimization is equivalent to intelligence? So, I mean, first of all, that's a semantic distinction, right? So even if I grant you, okay, yeah, optimization is not intelligence. Okay, let's assume that. Okay, and I guess specifically, maybe what you mean is like human intelligence, right? So those of us who we consider smart because we have success in various domains and we score high on IQ tests, right? So the smart ones of us, it turns out that, as Jan LeCun seems to think, right? Like, it turns out that we just aren't particularly good at optimization. We aren't particularly good at steering outcomes, that is, right? So Jan LeCun's famous example is like, you look at a company and the boss often has a lower IQ than the people who work for him. And to which my rejoinder was like, hey, Jan, have you ever worked for somebody with an 80 IQ? Right? Like, there obviously is, in my mind, like, no, sorry. Like, just because you're like a rich person saying like, why do people care so much about money? It's like, have you ever met somebody who doesn't have enough money? It's the same thing with IQ points, right? Like, I don't think you're really empathizing with how much work the IQ is doing in the water that you breathe in, right? Because you're interacting with high IQ people. So to answer the question more directly, so let's grant, for the sake of argument, that the human IQ scale has absolutely nothing to do with outcome steering power. Okay, which I think is a failure to observe something important. But okay, let's assume that that's right. In that case, I would just claim that outcome steering power is dangerous. Okay, I claim outcome steering power is dangerous. And I claim that AIs are on the treadmill to get more and more outcome steering power. Okay, so I haven't said anything about intelligence. Think whatever you want to think about intelligence. Okay, outcome steering power is what I think is dangerous. The reason I talk about intelligence is because, realistically speaking, outcome steering power is like obviously closely correlated to human intelligence. Okay, like, it's not a coincidence that most billionaires are going to have an above average IQ. That's not a coincidence. All right, so that and there is like, I think actually, funny enough, the data says that there's no disconnect between somebody's IQ. It's monotonically increasing, that when somebody's IQ is higher, their average earnings are higher. So contrary to Jan LeCun's anecdote, of course, it's true on the anecdote level. It's not a perfect correlation. It's not a correlation of one. But if all you know is that person A has a higher IQ than person B, you should guess that person A has a higher income than person B. It's monotonically increasing, last I checked. Yeah, and of course you could say, well, what if they have a high income but they can't steer outcomes, right? But give it up, okay? That would be my response, is give it up. All right, hold on. My wife is texting. Let's see how many more minutes I can have. All right, somebody's saying, yeah, exactly. It's like your boss, either they got there by random chance or just they are better at specific tasks that are relevant to succeeding in business. So their general intelligence might be lower, but on specific relevant business tasks are presumably higher. Either that or they got lucky. Yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, in a family business, right, you can have like incompetent management. That's actually more common in family businesses. And you can say, hey, the boss is like really dumb, right? You can imagine an 80 IQ. Like, I'm sure there's some CEOs of companies whose valuation is more than $50 million. And the CEO literally has an 80 IQ. Like, I believe that there's like at least 5 such companies in the entire earth. Okay. But those are the exceptions that prove the rule, right? And they're like extremely rare. Yeah, Jan LeCun does seem to miss a lot of important concepts, even though, he's got a Turing Award and I don't. So at the end of the day, I would say he's the better outcome optimizer than me. But then you have to ask the question, who has more YouTube subscribers? And actually that does kind of repaint the picture. Yeah, Michael's saying, Jan literally couldn't make Llama 4 better than 3, haha. Yeah, take that, Jan. See, I would have made Llama 4 great, but too bad they only had Jan LeCun. And producer Ori is saying, yeah, Jan's got a unicorn. So remember Jan did that move where he left Meta and he immediately got like the $1 billion investment. That's just standard. You gotta. It's just like it's just punching the clock and collect. It's like, instead of a gold watch, you got to get a $1 billion investment now. When you're senior management leaving an AI company. Let's see. Okay, we got an interesting kind of breaking news here. Let me show you breaking news from like a couple hours ago. Here, I'll share my screen. Okay, so Nate Soares quote tweeted this. So it's Bernie Sanders. It's a tweet from Senator Bernie Sanders saying, uncontrolled AI poses a severe danger to all of humanity. On Wednesday, I'll be hosting a discussion with leading AI scientists from the US and China about the need for international cooperation against this existential threat. This is an enormously important issue. Join us. Oh my God, I gotta tell you, it is pretty crazy to see an actual US senator talking in the language that we've been saying for, over a decade. The AI doomers, the Miri people. It's a U.S. senator. He's clearly been Yudkowsky-pilled or whatever it is, Bernie. And like I said on the show before, I don't think that Bernie has I'm not personally like the biggest Bernie fan, but like, on the single most important issue, he is like acting incredibly sane. And, you know, I got to give it up for the Burnmeister, you know, maybe I'll even vote for the guy. Who knows? Let's go crazy. Okay. Yeah. So he says, uncontrolled AI poses a severe danger to all of humanity. I read the tweet already, and he's got a poster saying the existential threat of AI. Whoa. Okay. Now that is a headline for a poster. Okay. We're not dicking around here talking about unemployment doom. This is the existential threat of AI and the need for international cooperation. And it's very interesting he titled it existential, because I always thought it was more effective to say extinction instead of existential, because extinction might have more power to it. It sounds a little less abstract. I don't know. Yeah, and the need for international cooperation, like cooperating with China. Crazy stuff. And look who he's got a panel, and it's featuring Max Tegmark, David Kruger, and then I guess people from China. I can't say I'm familiar with them. I don't even know how to pronounce the name. XUE. I'm not even going to try. XUE Lan and Zheng Yi. Maybe Shu. There, I tried. Okay. Zhu. Yeah, so these are university professors from Tsinghua, and Zheng Yi is the dean of the Beijing Institute of AI Safety and Governance. Bernie, slow clap. I wish I could give you a promoted message on your YouTube right now, because this is really good work, Bernie. I hope he does more of it. You know, Eliezer's commented that Bernie might not get everything right on this issue, but he's just acting like somebody who's sane, who just has a brain looking at the situation. Like, this is a crazy situation. Holding a panel about it makes a lot of sense. And then, you know, you're inviting the right people, and you're saying the right words. So I'm quite impressed. I'm quite impressed because, look, the guy is all old, right? He's like 80 or something, right? So the 80-year-old is the one who's capable of like using his brain in like a flexible, new, novel way. How did that happen, right? Yeah, all right. Let's see what you guys are saying here. So happy about Bernie. I don't care that he doesn't get all the details right. It's just a massive win moving over to it. Totally. Feel the existential burn. That's what producer Rory says. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. Feel the fires of hell burning. That should be his campaign slogan. Okay, and then so Nate Soares quote tweeted, he says, Bernie is showing once again that politicians can just discuss the dangers plainly. I hope many other politicians take note. AI is going to get more and more politically important. Yeah, you know, it is interesting. I wonder how much more politically important the existential side of this is going to get, right? Because, I mean, to me, it's intuitive that people are actually going to realize unemployment is happening, because it's going to be happening. Like, I claim it's, you know, less than 2 years away from happening is my best guess. And it's already like slightly happening now. So I don't know. I don't know how big the existential side is going to get. I wonder what other Twitter bangers we have to cover. Let me scroll my own feed. Obviously, Mike Israetel is coming on the show. Yeah, let me show you guys this. Hold on. Yeah, I feel like this should be like a recurring segment on these kind of shows, is like what's been going on Twitter the last few weeks since the last Q&A. All right, so we got challenge accepted. Dr. Mike Israetel, entrepreneur and PhD bodybuilder. Okay, spoiler. I'm actually going to ask Dr. Mike if the AI that I've been using to help me refine my form in my home gym, you know, because it's important for me to exercise with good form. Otherwise, it messes up like my spine or whatever, because I have hypermobile ligaments. I need to have good form. So I'm going to ask Dr. Mike to review a video of whether the AI has dialed in my form correctly. So you guys can look forward to that. And then over here, so I made a bet with Will Kiley. I think he's here on the stream because I did this other episode. Remember, I did the Ahmad Mostak episode, and I made that claim that I think unemployment is coming soon. So Will Kiley made a $500 bet with me. He says, in Liron's Doom Debates episode with E. Mostak, they both agreed that U.S. unemployment will probably be at least 2% higher in 2 years than it is today, i.e. 6.4% or higher in April 2028. Because, you know, right now it's 4.4%. So he says, I offered to bet against, and Liron agreed at $500 to $500 stakes, you know, 1-to-1 odds. And by the way, the reason I agreed is because he's giving me like 50% odds, and I'm like 60% sure. So I don't think this bet is like the greatest bet ever. But he wanted to bet, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't I bet, right? Do I care about putting $500 on the line when I think I have a slight advantage? I'm comfortable doing it. And he only proposed $100. I just said $500 because that was just like a calibrated amount of money where like I don't want to like forget that it exists. And, you know, I'm such a baller that I can easily forget that $100 exists, whereas $500, I'm kind of like, oh, wait, that's like, okay, I care about $500. All right. So he says, If the total U.S. unemployment rate in April 2028 is 6.4% or higher, I will pay Liron $500, or if he prefers, donate $500 to Doom Debates or a charity of his choice. Yeah, I'll take Doom Debates donation. On the other hand, if the U.S. total unemployment rate is less than 6.4%, I'll owe him $500. Yeah, and then I quote tweeted him. Let's see, where is that? Where is that? You know, the Twitter interface is a little tricky to navigate. Here. So I quote tweeted. I said, I claim with 60% confidence that 2 years will be enough time for data to show an early trend of AI pushing humans permanently out of jobs. So I'm happy to bet we will at 1-to-1 odds. Yes, I already lost a similar bet in the 2023 to 25 timeframe against Brandon Goldman, but I persist. Yeah, I mean, it's very true, because 2023 GPT came out and I started using it for customer service and I literally laid off some people, okay? And I'm like, wow, I've got alpha here, okay? Because I see these people getting laid off. I don't think they're in a strong position to get another job. I think they're in a weaker position than they were before. And I'm going to generalize and I'm going to say that the unemployment rate is going to move up. But I was totally wrong. The unemployment rate didn't move up. I don't think it's that hard to explain. I think that the economy is shifting around. I think, new jobs are getting created. I think people get more ambitious. Like, oh, great, I'm more productive, right? It's like Jevons paradox. Great, so let me do more things. Let me hire more people. I just think at some point Jevons paradox craps out, because you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do a bigger project. I'm going to hire more people. Oh, wait, not people, robots, right? Like I can just hire robots now. Like I'm good, right? So I do think Jevons paradox does crap out at a certain point. And I claim, I'm doubling down, I'm persisting. I claim that point is going to happen by 2028. If I just keep doubling my bet, I think I bet about 250 with Brandon Goldman, and now I'm betting 500. So I'm basically using a martingale strategy. Okay, every time the unemployment rate doesn't go up as much as I want, I'll just keep doubling my bet. And like on a 20-year time frame, I'm gonna make all my money back and then some. Okay, I'm gonna be betting like $10,250 in like 2050. That the unemployment rate is finally going to creep up, and then I will die being up $250 when it eventually happens. I think we got some new donations here. I'm losing track of the time here because we only have like 5 minutes left. I think there's 3. All right, so Daniel Brockman is saying, shout out to Am I. Am I is one of John Sherman's shows. You guys know Warning Shots. That's the one I do, and he does a couple other shows too. So Am I, they are screening the documentary now. I think starting yesterday in LA. Maybe you can go see it. Everyone go check it out. Coolest AI consciousness researchers. Am I dog, am I now, am-i.org, and go Bernie. Okay, I'm not entirely sure that I understood what the Am I guys are doing, so feel free to elaborate. But yeah, thanks for the extra SEK 200 currency units as well. Okay, EJJ back at it with a $9.99 donation. AI likely stays tool-like. Even if agentic, it may be alignable. That's what EJJ is saying. Near-term risk is human misuse. Surveillance to control AI may empower bad actors more than stop development, which is hard to contain. All right, guys, you heard it here. I can't say this enough on behalf of EJJ, that surveillance could be a real risk, guys, okay? I want you to be aware of that. Okay. Surveillance to control AI may empower bad actors more than stop development, which is hard to contain. I mean, look, I'm willing to admit that the actions I'm proposing are not costless, right? Like when I'm saying, hey, there should be like a centralized off button. Yeah, I agree. That's like a big cost, right? It'll slow down the economy. It'll, make it harder to cure cancer. I agree. I'm proposing a giant cost. And if I get cancer, boy, well, I wish AI progress would have been faster, right? Nathan Lebenz was talking about how, his son actually got cancer. Fortunately, the prognosis is looking good, but like his son got cancer, his young son, and he's saying, there's no decelerationist in the hospital, in the cancer ward. And, I hear you, I'm not trying to take that away from you or from myself. If I get cancer, right, I can easily imagine that being in my future. So yeah, I'm proposing a costly action here. It's still what feels right to me, or what seems right to me logically. But yeah, so EJJ is saying AI likely stays tool-like, okay? I mean, I disagree, right? I think that it is in the nature of achieving goals in the domain of the universe that it no longer feels tool-like, right? It just feels like war-like, right? I think there is a qualitative difference when you increase the domain, the size of the domain, when it's not just a video game, when it's not just a piece of software in a single repository, when you get to turn on side channel attacks, right? When there's no limits, right? Like when there's no rules of the game. When the rules of the game become that there are no rules, I don't think it's going to feel tool-like. So this is a very interesting distinction, right? The category of tool, it might feel like a category that talks about like the AI's personality or the AI's nature, but actually it is a distinction that refers to the domain on which the AI is optimizing, right? If it's optimizing for a narrow domain, that's what makes it a tool. But if it's optimizing from a broad domain, suddenly, the tool is operating on you or something, right? Like there's some qualitative shift when you increase the size of the domain. All right. William Kiley did a quick poll. Which side of the bet did those chatting take? Oh, nice. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing a lot of responses to Will's poll here, but he's saying, okay, here, let's end on this because it says that there's 50 of you guys here watching. So let's see if you'll respond to my poll. Let's see. Do you guys take Liron's side or Will's side? So the early results are pretty even, slight lead for me. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm only 60% confident, right? So I don't expect you guys to necessarily be super polarized. All right, so we'll check back in on that soon. All right, and then we got another promoted response that I haven't read yet. So it's from Daniel Brockman, and he says, actually, I think you should do a weekly live show like this where you literally just read Twitter. I'm not on Twitter. It's too overwhelming, but I actually would watch you parse through it. It's a great idea. You know what? I think you're onto something because I think we have a good thing going with like the monthly live streams because I'll be honest, it is kind of convenient because that way it's a little bit easier to produce a Q&A episode than to like edit, to prepare. And the great thing about these Q&As is we don't prepare for them, right? Like living my life is the preparation, okay? And listening to podcasts and stuff and going on Twitter. So these Q&As monthly have been nice. I don't think that I have got enough juice just based on the level of attendance. I do think it's a little bit lower when we do it monthly compared to doing it every 3 months. But then Daniel's pointing out, hey, why don't we just read Twitter every week? I would actually like to give that a try. Okay, so maybe we'll do like a 4-week experiment. We'll just read Twitter because there is a lot of juice. There's a lot of juice on Twitter. I'm ashamed to say that I spend, I'd say over an hour a day on Twitter, like basically wasting my life. The good news is that ever since I started using Claude Code, I feel like I've become more focused on like actually getting stuff done because I'm like so much more powerful. And I think it's made me use Twitter a little bit less as a result. So shout out to Claude Code for giving me a taste of what it's like to be like a regular employee who just does his freaking job instead of dicks around all day and tries to be a media personality. All right. Just to check in on the final results in the poll. So Liron's side is at 60%. Will's side is at 27%. Booyah! Booyah! Take that, Will. 15 votes. Hey, so if anybody wants to buy me out, Will, you can't bet. It's too late to bet. But if you want to buy me out, you can buy my $500 position. I'll sell it to you for just $550. All right, and then you'll. Or wait, does that make sense? No, because then Will's only going to pay you $500, right? So that doesn't make sense. I'll have to think about it, but there's some way that you should be able to buy me out, okay? The math isn't coming to me right now. Yeah, get on manifold markets and buy yes on Liron's side. So Will has created a manifold market, which is a representation of our bet. Yeah, all right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up. So we'll publish this episode on the main show feed, and like I said, there's a lot of really good episodes coming up in the next couple of weeks. We got good momentum here for the show. The more doomy things get, the more momentum the show about Doom has. That's the upside, I guess. Yeah, and Will's saying the price is currently at 27% that Liron wins. Wow. So if you guys think that there's like a 55% chance I'm going to win, you should buy it at 27% on manifold markets. Yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up now. Thanks so much for coming. This was fun. See you guys maybe in a week. Hopefully in a week. All right. To be continued.